Some people were born to sit by a river. Some get struck by lightning. Some have an ear for music. Some are artists. Some swim. Some know buttons. Some know Shakespeare. Some are mothers. And some people podcast.
That was good.
Hello, thank you.
I can't do this for very long.
You can't do this for very long.
So
One of you is doing Fran Lebowitz, and the other is doing Tom Waits in Shortcuts.
There's no good restaurants anymore. New York, come on.
We should just say that we are all, in fact, old.
This
That's
is
how the episode is starting out.
Oldest we've
We're all
ever
very
started
old.
an episode.
Can't rightly walk, can I?
No.
David's in
have
a
to
wicker
learn.
wheelchair.
We're going to end this episode in the crib. But we're starting one foot in the grave. Do you know, have any of you read the short story?
Ow.
The Curious Case of Benjamin Button by F. Scott Fitzgerald.
The drunkest short story he ever wrote.
I read it.
You
in
read it?
preparation for this. It's only like 20 pages.
It's quite. It doesn't have too much in common with the film, right? It's
No.
quite different.
Ask me how many pages it is.
You said 20, so I'm going to ask you how many pages it is.
20, but it feels a lot longer.
That just feels like it was like, wow, whatever, guy will age backwards. And they're like, yeah, sure, Scott. Can you where's your novel? And he's like, I just got to go get some cigarettes. I don't know why I'm doing That's not how he talked. Why is he suddenly
It's about him waking up with a hangover,
Yeah.
feeling really old,
Right. This is
and
the
by
problem.
the end of the night, he's kind of like goo goo gaga baby drunk.
every impression we do in this episode is going to end up being
like
seven.
this.
Gonna look a lot older.
I look a lot older. Man,
You
you know who I love?
know, Benjamin
Fucking-
Button?
Yeah, that especially that flavor.
This guy
of Benjamin Button. I want that guy around.
One of the 10 coolest characters we've ever covered on this podcast.
Like he should be on Jackass.
Snake Plissken,
Just hanging out with everyone else.
7-year-old Benjamin Button, Neo from The Matrix, the Terminator, Ripley. Who are the biggest badasses we've ever covered on this show?
I was just going to ask if Brad Pitt is the only actor, other than Thornton, obviously, to be nominated for doing a sling blade.
Yeah.
For at least half of this
French
movie.
fried potatoes.
He's gone full Sling Blade for at least a good chunk of it.
God.
The thing I was going to say about the story,
F. Scott Fitzgerald.
in the story,
He kind of talked like that. I don't know. What did he talk like? Old sport.
yeah, sure. I
Yeah,
don't know.
right.
Take a swing.
I
Pick something.
never heard him on the phonograph. All right, the story.
Your wax cylinder collection is not great, by the way. The other day, last time I was at your place, I was leafing through
I
it.
fucking put a wick in one of them and lit it by mistake. I was taking a bath.
You have rumors.
Rumors. Yeah, I'm born to run.
Yeah.
I've got no jacket
no deep
required.
cuts, though. No deep cuts. The thing in the story is it's like the father goes to walk around the block pacing and waiting for the doctor to come out with the cigar. The son, it's a boy. Congratulations, right?
Right. He goes to the post office. He gets his residual check for LXG.
How to baby eats a boy.
Yeah,
Had
okay.
to make a Jason Fleming joke.
Doctor walks out. He's like, I'm ruined, I tell you. And he's like, what happened? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? And he's like, it's something so awful. They'll take my degree away. Your family is banned from this hospital forever. And the accents are written phonetically exactly the way I'm doing them right now. And he's like, tell me what it is. He's like, I can't tell you. You go in there. You see for yourself. And he walks in and the nurses are like, oh, curse you, Mr. Button. And he's like, what happened? What was so bad? Point to me. Which one is my baby? And they go, it's that one over there. And it is a little old man with a long beard who's like, hello, father.
Right.
He's not a baby.
Right. He has an old man.
He
has an old man.
Like an old man just kind of tiptoed out
It's
of
Richard
his wife's
Farnsworth on
vagina.
a tractor.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah, right.
That's how it's presented. And they're like, we have to swallow you in a blanket. He's like, blanket, that's no clothes for an old man like me.
Let's go watch Matlock.
So, like a fully sentient old
Yes.
man.
Correct.
Right. With like his own personality and history.
Which makes sense when you hear that the first version of this movie to like properly be set up was Frank Oz directing as a Martin Short vehicle.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh
which is basically like
Right, Ben?
Yeah.
It's
That
a real
sounds good.
path not taken moment.
Right.
It's true.
It's
But
basically a Clifford sequel.
Basically
Yes.
Clifford.
Right.
Clifford, the whole
This might have-
life.
predated Clifford or was it right after?
I think it probably is around the same time. But I do think it was optioned in the 80s. We'll dig in.
But that's what you think about. Maybe like Martin Short playing a literal old man in like probably. I assume it was meant to be a modern day adaptation.
Sure.
But like going to school.
It sounds really fun and entertaining.
It sounds great.
Right.
We would have gotten Jiminy Glick that much earlier, because I feel like
that
would be
Jiminy
sort
Glick
of the voice.
Interviewing 7-year-old Benjamin Button.
Right.
That'd be good.
Yeah. How funny would that have been?
You say you're 7, but you look a lot older.
Not you. This movie.
But you look a lot older.
Yeah, they look a lot older, don't you?
Jiminy Glick is so
Look, this episode's coming
fine.
out a little bit
Martin
later.
Short has been defended on the internet.
The worst take in the
properly,
internet, and I don't say that lightly, was dropped, and in as a reward for us all having to only read the headline and not read the body of that piece.
Right.
We had the best 4 days of the internet in a long time, which was just everyone sharing Martin Short clips. And my new favorite Glickism is when a guest makes a joke and he goes like, I almost get it.
Exactly.
He laughs first and then says like, I don't think I understand. The way this movie, I mean, sort of like the magic trick of this movie is like building to the moment where you have Brad Pitt at the exact midpoint where he finally gets to be Brad Pitt, right? Where he's not de-aged,
Right.
he's not caked in makeup and whatever. It'd be so funny if the Martin Short movie, his perfect moment in the middle was Glick. That's when he is ideal.
He glicks it. Right.
Glicks,
Yeah.
It all glicks together.
And that's when he gets with his love interest, and she's like, "We're meeting in the middle." Like, right.
Yeah, it's his love interest, Dixie.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
Dixie.
Listen,
And she
this
rests.
is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I am Griffin.
I'm David.
I look a lot older.
I look a lot Simser.
This is a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce. Baby, it's a mini-series on the films of David Fincher. It is called The Curious Case of The Curious Pod of Benjamin Buttcast.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're talking about that film, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which I think is fair to say is kind of his most maligned movie. I feel like it has the worst reputation.
It's a joke. It's more of a meme than a movie at this point. And I think after rewatching it for the first time since it was in theaters, that it deserves to be a lot more than
I
that.
think this movie is very good.
This movie is very, very good.
I think this movie is wildly misunderstood, and I think it is a perfect example of a movie that was fucked by being placed in the center of Oscar discourse.
That's part of it.
And having a crazy digital stunt that was all anyone talked about in the lead up to the movie.
Right. The context in which this movie was released with those two forces
there are
framed
other
it
forces.
horribly.
David Fincher directing it, I think, is a huge problem for this movie.
Coming off of what is
his entire
almost
career,
inarguably his best film, the peak of his career.
But it's not just that. It's just this is, to this day, kind of an odd, sappy, in a good way, entry in his career.
Well,
we can talk about it. I'm just saying, people are sort of thrown, I think, being like, this is a Fincher movie?
But I also think that's why its reputation is so weird, is that people also view it as a failed weepy. That they're like, this is him trying to go full emotional catharsis
That's
and
the thing.
failing.
It's easy to tag it with exactly
whereas I think
he's going Oscar bait.
But he's going for something kind of darker here, and then for other people, they're like, this is sappier than I want out of his cynicism.
Well, look, I'm going to say my journey with this film, and I bet you I'm going to say your two journeys with this film when I say this.
Sure.
Okay.
Saw this film in 2008 when it came out.
Yeah.
I was 22. You were probably a little younger.
I was 19, but I looked a lot older.
And you were probably just a little older.
I was a little older, yeah.
But you looked a lot younger.
Well,
no, you did.
I could argue that.
And I was like, boring. And then I didn't watch it again for a long time. And then I watched it for this, and I cried my little eyes out. And I was like, what a wonderful
I don't
film.
think when you're that age,
I think I was not really.
You have to really have thought about death a lot more. You know,
Right.
we've all had death in our lives, but your own mortality.
Yes.
And this is a movie where like everyone's like, oh, it's a sentimental Oscar bait. Yes, about the inevitability and the horrifying inevitability of death, and trying to eke some small modicum of hope.
Not only that, but this movie is
comfort out of
kind of about like meaninglessness.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like we're here and we're gone, and like there's not much we can do about that.
This movie's mostly about working a tugboat, so I don't know.
Well, yeah, sure.
But
which David is meaningless, and
to
yes,
be
if there's
as reductive as possible, but I do think this is like the cultural narrative of this movie is he's trying to do Gump, right?
yes,
right.
right.
Eric Roth wrote it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's
He's
positioned that way.
deep,
It's
you know,
Paramount.
deep south.
They put a ton of money into it. It's got a huge beloved star, 2 huge beloved stars. But you're sort of like, this doesn't feel like the kind of movies big studios make anymore. And it's because Forrest Gump is this fucking aberration that every couple of years studios would be like, could we replicate that in any way? And Big Fish is an attempt at a Gump.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years after this, Walter Mitty's an attempt at a Gump.
When's the last time we gumped?
I think Walter Mitty was the end of them trying to even get a Gump.
Has there not been one Gump since Mitty?
And Walter Mitty parodies Benjamin Button, almost as if to say, they fucked up, we're going to Gump it correctly.
Right.
But is like also haunted by a little bit of Stiller being like, how much like studio comedy do I need to put in this to satisfy my audiences? But this movie, I think people saw it as, oh, he fucked up trying to Gump. Rather than,
and isn't that embarrassing?
Right. Rather than I think Fincher going, here's my interpretation of Forrest Gump, which I think he executed pretty successfully to his worldview, but it is almost by design a movie that is kind of prickly and off-putting, and like it's not going to offer you any emotional catharsis. It's deeply sad if you really engage with what it's saying.
It gave me some
but in a way that like most people don't really want to have to think in this movie.
It's funny though, because it's like I was talking to my friend who hadn't seen Button, because she's like 5 years younger than me, and it's kind of enough.
Our guest today, by the way, is Richard Lawson.
Hello.
A Vanity Fair local man.
Can I just say before you finish your point, David, I am so honored just a few days after its New York Fashion Week debut to be in the Congratulations Atelier.
Yes.
I don't think a lot of people get to come here.
I'm wearing my recycle polo.
Yeah.
I want one.
David, I'm going to get you one.
Right. I love a polo.
Absolutely. Yes. We are.
Call me a British mint because I love polo.
Okay.
Okay.
Some people get that.
Yeah. We are like just almost about a week. It's been about a week since we did
Ben's Fashion Week.
Congratulations live at the Bell House.
Yeah.
Richard was
It's a
gracious enough to be a celebrity judge.
I had a small amount
fashion.
of participation in the show, and then I felt like the second half of the show, Mrs. Harris kind of took over.
Yeah, you really got body checked off the stage.
But it's
by
so
Mrs.
weird
Harris.
though, because I feel like there was no reason why you guys couldn't have done something together, but you just kind of
I'm
disappeared.
such a big fan. I'm so on the record as being such a big fan of her
I
work.
saw her backstage. That
She
lady's
was-
ego.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
She
She was
threw-
fucking carrying it around
She
with
threw
her.
a phone at me.
Now, to be fair, you wouldn't hurry up and
Right. And I
give her her
had
hotel
stolen
key.
her Dior dress.
She
But
did dust it first, too.
That's true.
The
That
phone.
was-
It was a
that was
squeaky
nice
clean
of her.
phone. Yeah.
It was so fun being backstage. It reminded me of being in college and putting on a play. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity, Ben, and you too also. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Seriously.
that's all true.
It was so fun, and I want to thank you guys
Hey.
for letting me do that crazy show.
Oh, of course. This is like 2 months old by
But
the
I
time
mean,
this
it was
episode
very
comes out.
much
sorry.
most,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
a month, but it was
Okay.
very much Griff and I just sort of being like,
We're along for the ride.
So this is your thing. Like
Yeah.
people were kept texting me questions, like and I would just be like, guys, I understand that I'm often a logistical person.
you came
I'm
backstage.
only talent this time.
You arrived backstage exasperated and said, like, what is this fucking thing? Why is everyone asking me where to go?
Yes. I was getting texts from a lot of people being like, I'm here, where do I go? And I'm like, this is Ben's show. It's not my show.
Ben, you and Marie.
Your fashion show's in the spring in Milan.
Yes.
So-
Right.
See, I always do Milan in the spring.
Yes.
Everyone knows that.
Everyone knows that. You guys have a non-compete clause with each other. You and Marie, party,
Yes.
did a long segment of your favorite looks in film history.
Yeah, that I actually didn't really see much of because I was
No,
backstage.
we were backstage. Had you seen Button before?
I had never seen
What?
Button.
I feel like there's some stuff in Button that could repurpose itself into a congratulations formal wear line.
There's some Lukes.
Okay, such as
Being 7 and looking a lot older.
Yeah.
Feels like a very Ben
tattoos you can
Hosley
kiss.
concept.
Tattoos you
Tattoos you can kiss.
Mwah.
The Jared Harris character who does his own tattoos.
He's an artist.
Those are some fantastic looking tattoos.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They shot up my paint. Isn't that what he says?
They shot my painting. Yeah, painting.
Painting.
Yeah,
He says
it's like
painting.
he's talking
Okay.
about his own.
A lot of hot southern wool.
Yeah.
I like movies where people wear wool down in the bayou.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it breathes so well, you know.
Yes.
To finish my point,
Please.
Talking to my friend who's just a little younger than me, and that's enough to have not seen this in theaters, and then basically missed the boat on Button.
Sure.
Because Button didn't really endure that much.
No, it bought its way into the Criterion collection.
God bless. I have
and
a
otherwise,
disc.
yes, exists as a joke, exists as a meme.
And I was like, this movie got 13 Oscar nominations.
13, which is like almost like
it's close to the
It's
record.
like 2 below the record. I
Obviously,
think.
it's a
Yeah,
technical
3 below.
movie, but it got 13 Oscar nominations. It won 3. It made $330 million
was a
worldwide.
hit.
It starred Brad Pitt and Kate Blanchett. It
Yes.
was directed by. It has career launching performances from people like Mahershala Ali and Taraji Henson.
Not only that, it's like basically it's immediately followed by Fincher's most successful run.
100%.
Like this kickstarts him finally getting accepted by the Academy. They recognize him, and then he does the run where it's like 3 for 3. The movies do well. They get Oscar nominations. People are into them.
Yep. Yeah, and yet it is a completely forgotten movie in some way,
It's
other
a
than the
bit of
jokes.
a forgotten movie.
Other than
she was like,
oh, he has Benjamin Button's
right. She was like,
disease.
I know he
that's the
ages
joke.
backwards, right? And I was like, yeah, it's sort of related to his, long lost love in a diary while Hurricane Katrina bears down on him.
Well,
I'm
this is my
realizing this
whole-
sounds insane as I type this out.
Yeah, this is my whole read on the movie.
They're like, it's that Tiffany Pollard meme, like Hurricane Katrina, question mark.
It is.
Like
an hour in, Forky was like, wait, it's Hurricane Katrina
Like,
is happening? And I was
literally,
like,
yeah.
it is.
and they're like knowing newsroom-esque lines of like, oh, it's gonna skip us.
It's not gonna hit the city, right? Yeah. Anyway, but then no, this is part of your big take. Okay.
That's my big take, but if I can just I kicked my face down. This is usually what
Wow,
David
it's
does,
the-
and
the-
I've gotten to the bad habit.
The power is transferring.
I know. I'll say my big take in a second, but my journey to this movie was I liked Fincher well enough, but he was not one of my guys. I go to see Zodiac opening weekend. I'm like, holy shit, he is the guy.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, at that moment, I'm like,
you're saying that about the Zodiac Killer.
yes.
Obviously.
And I was like, and the director did a pretty
I
good
like
job.
that. I like what he stands for. I like how he does it.
I hope Zodiac still work, and I'd love to see him do a couple more murders.
Boy, oh boy.
I felt the way about the Zodiac Killer I did about Axl Rose, where I was like, I got into him too late. Are they ever going to get back together and do the old routines again? The point is,
Sorry, I was.
I know, and David checked his emails, and you checked your phone, and Ben started editing a different episode. I saw Zodiac. I was all about it.
Right. Yeah.
And so then I'm like,
Hard not to be.
whatever this guy's next movie is, this is now my most anticipated movie. And you'd hear these things because it had like such a long post-production process. I remember reading an article in 2007 in the New York Times about what they were trying to like pioneer.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, I'm sorry. I remember reading that article in 2006 before Zodiac even comes out. And then I'm all in after Zodiac. The trailer for this movie I remember seeing for the first time opening weekend, Crystal Skull.
Mm-hmm.
The trailer was not online.
Yep.
It's summer 2008. It's kicking off the summer. It's a lot of trailers for the big summer movies.
Yeah.
This thing plays, and much like I remember the feeling of when the Social Network trailer played for the first time.
Yep.
2 great fucking teasers.
Yep.
That have such a different tone than everything else that was playing that the audience just went pin drop silent. Was like, what is this fucking thing?
I must have seen this trailer 100 times.
It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. And
It's a great trailer.
it is a movie that, if anything, suffers from the fact that its trailer is a better version of what it's trying to do in 90 seconds than the movie is.
Yeah.
It's
Look,
just such a concise,
He
evocative.
cuts a good trailer.
Yes.
Remember that Mank trailer? Everyone saying Mank all the time?
Oh, yeah.
Mank!
What's Mank?
Excuse me?
Is that a movie?
It's an alert.
It's a state of mind.
I say it to mean that there's a bird near you. Mank!
Yeah.
For me, it's more of a worldview.
I mean, look, in 2008, I
Yes.
think we're probably pretty similar, Griffin.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of movies. I had just moved to New York.
Yeah.
That was prime. Yeah.
Didn't have a lot of friends.
Yes.
Not to humble brag.
Humble
I had no friends. I lived
Yeah.
in New York. I saw a
Yeah.
movie every week, if
Yeah.
not more. Saw this trailer 1,000 times. My rewatch of this movie was probably the second time I've seen it, but there's so many lines like I look a lot older,
Yes.
or we're meeting in the middle, or whatever. Where
But
I'm
that's
like, God,
also-
I heard that line.
That's
1,000
main
times.
trailer.
Yeah,
The
that's main
teaser has almost no dialogue
Alright.
other than the opening narration.
Yeah, it's
and
just
then
narration. Yeah.
And it runs through his whole life. The
Yeah.
trailer, the last shot of the trailer is Kate Blanchett walking the little
With
boy
the boy.
version.
I mean, and I remember that very clearly.
And it's just kind of like tone poem stuff,
Mhm.
but done in order. And you're like, holy shit. I also remember thinking, is Fincher the first guy who's cracked the uncanny valley thing?
That was the whole
and
big
that's
question.
that's
right.
the promise of the teaser,
Right.
because you're like, this is like pretty evocative and
Yes.
and magical seeming art, like, but it's also damned by those expectations.
Totally.
It's kind of why like the A24 trailers for The Whale
Yes.
like did not want to show you Fraser, you know, because it was like,
What do you mean? We had one perfectly good picture of him.
right, that was just
That's
used
worth
on
1,000
everything. But you know what I
words.
mean? Like and
That was all you needed.
the Benjamin Button one was even more withholding,
Yeah.
you know, and it really worked until it kind of doesn't, because you eventually do have to see the thing.
Yes. But that first teaser, I was like, holy fucking shit.
Mm.
And I remember saying to my dad, they played the trailer for the new Fincher movie. It looks like it's like one of the best things ever made. And he was like the trailer is one of the best things ever made, or the movie looks like it's going to be one of the best films ever made. And I said, I think both.
Yeah.
I went into this with unrealistically high expectations of my man's just going to make one of the 10 greatest films of all
A
time.
lot of us did have really big expectations, and this wasn't a festival movie, so like we were just seeing it. you
I love a
know?
long movie title like that. You
Totally.
know, that's kind of exciting and
Like,
intriguing.
The film's called Benjamin Button.
Right.
I'm going to bed.
But
Right.
what have I told you about the curious
His
And-
cases are curious.
And you're like,
one.
how curious? Like,
How
what are we talking
curious.
about here?
Like George?
Right. Like, is there a man with a big yellow hat? Like, what are we doing?
But I saw it. I was slightly disappointed, but I don't think I dismissed it the same way you did. Where I
It's
was
not I
like,
thought it was terrible, but I
Yes.
was definitely kind of like, oh, that was a little bit of a slog.
Yeah.
Technically, so impressive.
I
you
think
know?
I had been in New York for 2 years. I was, you know, where I was working,
where?
Gawker.com.
Hey, a perfect
As a
website.
staff writer.
Yes.
That was my first full year.
Mhm.
And so I was not in that kind of headspace.
Mhm.
And I was, and because I mean, I still love Forrest Gump. Like I owned the VHS, like whatever. So I have a,
You
I
eat
mean,
chocolates
my
all the time.
sentimentalism has reemerged.
Sure.
But I just knew working for Gawker, I was like, there's no way that I can
No.
like that movie.
No.
You know, and so maybe I went in, even though that trailer
feeling
was good,
snarky.
feeling
Yeah.
snarky. Yeah. And then I just kind of forgot about it until I rewatched it for this podcast.
No, I remember seeing it, thinking it was good, defending it, feeling like I get what he's trying to do here. I understand why people are going to dislike this. I can't deny I feel a little disappointed by it,
Mhm.
but I respect it. And then I felt like it kind of got a bad rap, but it was also like, I don't really feel amount of enthusiasm to want to defend it.
And it partly got a bad rap because it did well and got Oscar nominations.
Totally.
It's like some people were like, you know, had very lofty feelings.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I feel like I said it on this podcast, but I was like, I rewatched some of Benjamin Button. I think I kind of get it now, like in a deeper way. And I've been like metastasizing this Benjamin Button take for a while now. That is, I mean, we can unpack
Maybe
it
we
at
should-
large,
Right. We should get into the making of the movie a little
but
bit.
I think it's almost like pointedly an anti-Gump.
Yes,
Well,
it
he
is.
does
It
kill
is saying
Forrest Gump
here's
in
what
the
it
film.
actually is to sort of tumble through time.
right.
Right.
You know, and Gump addresses death, but this is like, no, everything about being alive, unfortunately, is about death. It's not just this kind of like picaresque where you just kind
Yes.
of like go through eras of whatever. It's like, no, we have a horrible World War II scene. And look, the scene in Gump, that's the Vietnam scene, is like, there's death in that. But like, yeah, I feel like he's like, no, here's the darkness behind the sort of Gump Americana.
I think the fundamental thing that's frustrating about this movie to watch for a lot of people is that the character is so passive. He
Yeah.
is such a
Yeah.
wallflower. The opposite of Gump, where it's like, here's this ordinary man who's just like driven by the beat of his own drum and he marches through life and he positively impacts everything he touches.
Right.
Every important moment is changed because of him. And Benjamin Button's a character where, like, if you remove him from the movie, there aren't a ton of events that change radically.
He's floating through life like most of us are.
He witnesses
know?
stuff. He touches people. His impact is the emotional connections he makes with people briefly in passing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those people's lives are not like changed by course of action by meeting him by and large, right? Outside of his daughter being born.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
he
that's
abandons his daughter, which
I-
is the cruelest
yes.
thing he does.
and I
Yeah.
think that's the other part of it, which is like everything that seems unfinchery about this movie being kind of like sappy, it being sort of fantastical, you know, having this sort of like storybook quality that feels so against his like absolute detail-oriented realism, cynicism, whatever, is like, it's the framing device. It is, here we are in the middle of Katrina, right? Here's Julia Ormond giving a very, very good performance. A kind of key performance.
She's awesome.
And a big
She's so
a
good.
big movie for her to have been in at that point in her career.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
obviously, she is literally Brad Pitt's love interest in Legends of the Fall. So
Yes.
it's kind of funny to
Yeah.
have her play his
Well, and there's a
daughter.
lot of like Pitt career carrying people, bringing them back in this movie. I mean, he and Blanchett were supposed to do The Fountain together. So this is sort of the realization of them spending years trying to find a movie to do together.
Jared Harris used to be his captain.
Fincher says he cast Jared Harris specifically because of his like one moment in Ocean's 12.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Wasn't
Okay.
Lost in Space?
that he like loved him in that. No. Well, he thought that was a documentary.
No, that's
Not
why.
to make
That's why.
Richard's
That's why
joke.
Fincher cast Matt LeBlanc.
Yes.
Yes, right, right. And then Matt LeBlanc showed up, and Fincher was like, "You have the armor, right?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Matt LeBlanc's
You know,
like, "That was a
Lacey
movie."
Chabert plays the hummingbird in this movie, right?
Yeah, and of course, and Blarp was the first AD.
Yeah. Pitt,
on,
Pitt
Blarp.
recommended Tilda, although I think because of post-production, this must have been shot before Burn After Reading, even though that came out first.
Okay.
They
Do you think
both
if
came
you're
out the
Tilda,
same
like,
year, right?
did they have to
Yeah.
sit Tilda down and be like, okay, so you are going to be referred to as plain as paper, looks wise.
Yes.
Are you okay? with that?
Forky was like,
Yeah.
"What?"
Yeah.
Like,
If there's
I was like,
anything
look,
that Tilda
they-
Swinton,
they
is
do their
not-
best to make
Yeah.
her seem dowdy,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
sort of in personality or whatever. But yeah, she's a very striking looking woman. I'm
Yeah.
the first to say this. About
And I
Tilda
had
Swinton.
completely forgotten she was in the movie.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
the part I was
Oh,
looking
it's the
forward
best
to.
part.
Speaking
Oh,
of
yeah,
forgetting
that's right.
things, I have to preface this episode by saying, in a fit of, in a really misguided fit of pique, I decided after watching Benjamin Button that I needed to rewatch for the 100th time Brad Pitt's other somewhat misbegotten epic about death, Meet Joe Black.
Mm.
So if at any point I say something and you're like, Richard, no, that
Uh-huh.
happens in Meet
It's
Joe
because
Black,
of Meet Joe
just
Black.
I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Meet Joe Black, a film I am committed to someday covering on this
One of the
podcast.
craziest
Yeah, we're-
performances.
yeah.
Well,
We'll
we're
get there.
definitely going to cover it.
We'll get there.
Can I do it? I'm calling it now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Fine.
Yeah, done.
You're in.
Shot called. The Julia Ormond deathbed Blanchett superstructure
Hospital,
of
yes,
this movie
yeah.
happening during Katrina
Read that here diary over there.
is the one section of the movie that is in like kind of the trademark Finchery style. It has no heightened storybook quality. It feels very emotionally sparse, right? And stripped down.
Washed out. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And I think Ormond in The Silences speaks very well this sort of history of their relationship, right? A mother who perhaps was always a little bit at arm's length, was not cruel, was not, cold necessarily, but was a little bit unknowable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that feeling that like
It was a later in life pregnancy. She probably
Correct.
was not like dying to be a mother.
I have not lost a parent, but I've lost people in my life, and there is that thing of just like either you lose someone unexpectedly and you're immediately overcome with the things you never got to talk about, the things you never got to know, or you're in this sort of position where someone's leaving you and you're trying to squeeze out everything you can. You're trying to get some sense of resolution or some sense of understanding at the very least, right?
Mm.
And this movie is about like from that prism, her trying to understand the life of a mother that has never really made sense to her. And beyond that now, the introduction of a father character she never even knew.
Mm-hmm.
And it all has this heightened quality because it's like, it's not a memory play. It's like her reading her mother's diaries and trying to
No,
project.
her father's diary.
Oh,
Not
yes,
her-
I'm
not-
sorry.
not her
Her
mother's,
father's
yeah.
diaries at her mother's behest, trying to project an understanding of what these things must have looked like. And I feel like when I hear stories about my children, my parents as children, their childhood, and especially when I was a child, I almost picture them as like Muppet Baby versions of themselves,
Mhm.
where it's hard to think of them as an actual child. I think of them as just an adult with a bigger head and a tinier body.
Right.
You know, and I'm not
Right.
saying this movie is arguing that this is not an actual truth, but you could argue that it is like kind of a fanciful, not to get all Hassan Minaj, emotional truth, right?
Oh dear. Yeah.
But it's like her
Benjamin
trying,
Button does get anthraxed at one point in this movie.
her
right?
trying to learn
Jesus.
the story.
You
the
know,
life
Griffin
story.
didn't actually grow up in New York City,
I did.
but he emotionally did.
And like
Uptown
the
Griffin, yes.
real Benjamin Button was played by Steve Randazisi.
Correct. That man
What's he up to?
He told one lie. It was never part of his act.
One eensy white lie.
He showed a lot of contrition. He backed off. That's all I'm saying. I can't
Look.
believe how much better I think he looks now in his handling of that entire situation.
He did tell just the one lie. I mean, that we know of, obviously, just the one. But he did tell it a lot in a way that was a little freaky.
I agree. I mean,
It was long. It was a long story. It was long.
another long story is the curious case of Benjamin Button.
That's true.
But my point is, it feels like this is sort of like theater of the mind, her trying to wrap her head around lives that she's learning about at the last second.
Just before it's all washed away, quite literally.
Yes,
Yeah.
and this, I'm going to paraphrase this thing I forget I heard someone say recently, but this thing of like, it is weird how quickly memories become fiction.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, what you actually live through and experience, it starts to become the version of it that you tell in
your brain
head.
changes things that you
Right.
don't even realize.
And then when other
you're
people tell
telling
you
a story.
their things, I swear to God, this happened. This is my memory. It was exactly like this. You're then now filling in your mind's eye, the version of what they're telling you was reality. That's already a story that they tell themselves. And this sort of like structure of the movie is like, that's the real film, is Julia Ormond at Cape Blanchett. And this is her trying to make sense of two lives that she didn't really know in her last glimpses, happening in the backdrop of Hurricane Katrina, because much like her mother's death and that entire life that remains something of a mystery to her, this whole city is about to be washed away.
Yeah.
This clock's going to get drowned,
Mhm.
you know? Like, all of this eventually just sort of
Like
goes
everything.
off. Right. And it's like, it's both not incredibly important and deeply sad.
Yeah.
Benjamin Button was not someone who changed the course of American history, but he had a life, and his life impacted her mother and resulted in her, and they'll both be gone. And then it's just myth.
Right. Right.
And
yeah.
sometimes the myth is something insane, like a man who was a baby, was born an old man, turned into a young teenager, whatever.
Right.
But
Like,
also, like, anything becomes distorted to that level of myth.
My dad, who's an older gentleman, will tell us, in a life, he was 49 when I was born, so he had a whole life. But he was 45 when he married my mom, so like whole life before then. He was one of the first professors at UC Irvine, and he used to like drink martinis and smoke a pipe. And I'm like, there is no way that's actually real, because
Right.
it sounds like a myth. And it's like, no, because it's just so far in the past
Right.
that like it's just like, was there really a baby that was born old? Like,
That's my
I don't
thing.
know.
When you
know.
try to picture that version of your dad in your head, does
It's
it
like-
feel any more absurd than the version of Benjamin Button in the bathtub
No.
covered in
It's
wrinkles?
a story. Like, you're
Right.
right. Like,
Yeah.
if I try to picture
It's lore.
stories from the past
Yeah.
about my immediate family or whatever. Right. I'm imagining a movie version of their lives.
Yes.
Right. Obviously.
Yeah.
I can't go see it myself.
No, you can't. I watched.
Griffin.
I accept your point.
I can't.
I watched this movie with the commentary, and there's the opening little kind of a prologue to the story within the story
Mr.
of
Cake.
Elias Koteas and Mr. Cake and the Clock. And he said that they screened it for audiences, and they were just like, I don't understand what this has to do with the movie. Is this
Right.
going to pay off in some larger way? They didn't like that being seeded, and then 2 hours and 45 minutes later being paid off in a way that's more thematic, that isn't like
Right.
super plot oriented or whatever, right? And he said the shift was late in post production. We added all the filters of the film grain and the pops and the crackles and the distortion and whatever.
Which looks so good.
And once we did that, everyone was into it,
Right.
because it was sort of like, well, this isn't real. This is a story you're being told.
Right.
This is old. We're using
Yeah.
the language
It's
of
a
old film
fable,
and
yeah.
whatever. And it's like important to do that tone setting of like, well, here's basically the diary starting out with a fable that he heard, that he's just taking on word, that feels
Right.
as abstracted to him
That's
as everything
yeah.
she's about to read about him, recounting by his own word his real life.
and what would it be to go backwards? But of course, he's not actually. I mean, he's living backwards in some ways, but he is moving towards death, same as everybody else. I think. I think there's maybe points in this movie where
But he-
characters who see him after a long time, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're so young." Don't think like, but you like. They think that he might just kind of look that way forever or something. They
Right.
don't imagine that there's an end to it. And the fact that Button dies before Daisy
Yes.
is,
Well, but
is
also-
interesting in
But
that
also
regard.
the fact that he's like,
not
I
reversing
know
time in real
the
ways, yeah.
end because
Right.
I was alive for that part in
Right.
a weird way.
David,
Yes.
fall is here. And you know what that means?
Layering season.
Layering season. Bombas makes it easy with socks, tees, and underwear that feel good and do good, because every item purchased gives essential clothing to someone who needs it.
Now look, Griff, as you may know, socks, tees, and underwear, those are the 3 most requested items in homeless shelters. When you buy one from Bombas, you're also giving one to someone who needs it. 1 purchased item equals 1 donated, okay?
Yeah, and Bombas makes returns and exchanges easily. They have a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you get a hole in your socks, you get eaten by the dog, Bombas will do whatever it takes to make it right.
Cozy stuff, extra soft, extra long staple cotton, merino wool. Feels like little pillows for your feet.
I'm wearing them right now.
I'm wearing Bombas socks right now and Bombas underwear. I've got Bombas shirts too. I have it all.
I have it all. I went to the foot doctor just yesterday. My feet couldn't be more tender. And boy, are they being taken care of by these Bombas right
Foot
now.
doctor do to you?
There's
Doesn't
a lot
matter.
of things.
What
What didn't he do to me?
Every Bombas item, as you said, designed for comfort. No toe seams, no
Nope.
itchy tags. If you're going on a hike, they have nice hiking socks that wick away moisture. Maybe if you've got kids, they've got good kid Bombas socks.
Yeah.
I've got some Bombas socks for my
One
daughter.
New look for the new school year.
And maybe an early holiday gift. They got Bombas gift boxes.
They're
Cozy
also-
goodies.
I should just mention the most successful company in the history of Shark Tank.
Go to bombas.com/check and use code check for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/check and use code check at checkout. Look, F. Scott Fitzgerald, I'm cracking the dossier.
Wow.
Heard of this guy?
Yeah.
1922.
Love to pull the cord.
The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Now you've cracked the voice. That is what he sounded like.
It's published in Collier's.
That was Trumbo, actually.
Yeah, how wet
The
were the
baby
keys on
ate
his
it
typewriter?
backwards. Yeah. Well, you got to, how wet's the script? That's
Slow
always
splash.
the question. Fitzgerald said the story was inspired by a remark of Mark Twain's, the effect that it was a pity the best part of life came at the beginning and the worst part at the end.
Youth is wasted on the young, etc.
Yes, exactly. And so he submits this story. An anonymous admirer says to him, "I read this story, and I wish to say that as a short story writer, you would make a good lunatic. I have seen many pieces of cheese in my life, but all the pieces of cheese I have ever seen, you are the biggest piece. I hate to waste a piece of stationery on you, but I will."
And then
That's what
Zelda,
at replies were like back then.
and then Zelda said, "Lunatic, don't mind if I do."
Wow.
Wait, so
let me at him.
where was this in his career? This is
Well, that's a great question, and I will, of course, answer it by Googling F. Scott Fitzgerald
Please
date
do.
of birth. He would only have been like not even 30. But then again, he died when he was 44,
Right.
so it's not.
but any of his
It's after The Sight of
long-form-
Paradise, which is his debut novel,
Book of
which
Love.
is a wonderful book.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's the same year as The Beautiful and Damned, which is his difficult second album.
Okay.
And then Gatsby is 1925.
But this is pre-Gatsby.
It's pre-Gatsby.
Okay.
So he was how old when Gatsby was written?
He was 30.
Want to feel old?
I have to go home. That's depressing. For me, not for him.
Well, I mean, he had some depressing shit happen to him too, such as he drank like a quart of whiskey every fucking hour until he melted.
That's only depressing after a certain point. For a while, it's pretty fun.
Sounds like a lot of
Yeah.
fun, actually. Yeah.
60 years later, Ray Stark, a producer, brings this story to Universal, and in 1988 is the fabled Frank Oz Martin short project. So that's probably right before Clifford, because
Yeah.
Clifford
Clifford
was made in
films-
1990, I think.
I think Clifford Films in 89 comes out in 90.
Four.
So maybe when,
Maybe
when
films in 90.
maybe
Yeah,
when
you're right.
Benjamin Button fell apart, Short was like, "But I
Clifford
want to
Yes.
do
feels
something like
yes.
this."
It kind of feels
Yeah.
possible.
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
that Short was like, I got to do something where I'm a young person in the body of an old person or whatever. Universal Chairman Casey Silver.
So we have F. Scott
Ben's
Fitzgerald
losing
to
his
thank
damn
for
mind.
Clifford.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
the
just glad
notion-
that Clifford is coming up
Like if
in
F.
the
Scott
conversation.
if he walked back into our lives, Scott Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Do you think we'd be like, we're gonna fire up a movie for you? Actually,
And
Moving
Zelda's like,
picture.
"I loved it."
Tear in his eyes is what I've always imagined.
This is where this art form was headed.
I always dreamed to write something this good.
I've always just wanted to say Mason.
He wants to say Mason.
He really does.
So, Casey Silver has a next door neighbor by the name of Robin Swicord, a lady who wrote the 90s Little Women.
Yes.
She wrote Matilda. She wrote a pure masterpiece with lightning called Practical Magic.
Your favorite movie of
The
all
day
time.
she wrote that, the roof blew off her house from quality.
Also, the Kazan's mom.
Yes.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
Right. She's part of the right. Exactly.
Right.
And she gives that one to Amblin, that script that she writes, and Spielberg wants to make it.
With Tom Cruise.
Yeah, correct.
would have
Kathleen
been-
Kennedy and Frank Marshall come aboard as producers.
Cruise would have been particularly
Well, they wouldn't have
bad
had to
in this
digitally
period.
shrink him at all, which is nice.
But the stilts
Yeah,
budget.
baby size as it is.
Yeah. No, it's that thing of like Minority Report in 2002 was like the culmination of 10 years
Right. They've been circling.
of them circling being like, it has to be the right thing.
Spielberg decides instead to do some like bullshit too for Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, wherever those are.
He was going to make one Benjamin Button instead. He does Jurassic and Schindler.
Kennedy Marshall then found
Yes.
their production company. They take this over to Paramount, and that is when Fincher, who has not even made Alien 3 yet, is shown this script. So he
But
had,
the Swikord script originally is what he showed.
correct.
Yeah.
He liked it, but he said it was a beautiful script, but it hinged on the audience's affinity for and knowledge of jazz, because this is part of Fitzgerald's like Tales of the Jazz Age,
Right.
and I imagine this original script might have been more indebted to the Fitzgerald story.
Interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is in a collection called Tales of the Jazz Age.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now it's often just printed with Benjamin Button on the
Right.
cover, and Brad Pitt's there, and his dick is out, and you're like, Jesus.
So like jazz, Benjamin Button's about the ages you don't look like.
right?
Yes.
right, right.
It's about the ages you don't live through.
Right.
So then it's like they're shopping this around, and they are like, "Fuck." The real problem we have here is you would need to cast 5 actors.
Yeah.
Because you're going to need to do this. You know, you can't do this with visual
Well,
effects.
the Martin Short version of it makes sense. The second they push it towards drama,
right.
it requires some sort of, at least,
And if you cast that many actors, you're losing all the impact. Of
totally.
it.
And you
Yeah.
can't bill it as a movie star movie. You
Right,
know, it's
right.
like you can't
It's an
like get a
ensemble, yeah.
talent in the same
Yeah.
way. Agnieszka Holland, who did The Secret Garden, signs on pretty much after that.
And she just had a big hit in the festivals.
She did.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see
Yeah.
it. What's it called again?
Green Border.
Border.
Yeah.
It is wild how
Sequel to Green Zone.
most of the directors and writers who are flirting with it at this point in time are people who worked on a lot of like August
Yes.
children's literature adaptations.
Yes.
You know, you're
things
like-
where the sun is streaming through the trees.
Sure.
Right.
Yes.
I'm
and someone's in a
surprised
linen
Quran wasn't
dress.
involved
Yes,
after Little
totally.
Princess.
Makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
Obviously,
would
Ron
have been there.
Howard steps in, but
Uh-huh.
John Travolta steps in with him. I can only imagine how subtle that performance would have been.
Well, Benjamin Button would have smoked cigarettes the entire time. And they wouldn't have needed wigs in the beginning.
He was going to play him like Edna Turnblad.
And
too,
I
right?
think by the late 90s, and you do hear this sometimes,
Jesus Christ.
Marshall and Kennedy are like, you know what? This is just one of those scripts
Yeah.
that's really good on the page and it will never get made.
Unmakeable.
Like that's just what it
Yeah.
is. Then Spike Jones comes aboard,
Mhm.
gets Jim Taylor, Alexander
Alexander-
Payne's,
yeah.
to rewrite the script. Charlie Kaufman supposedly rewrote the script
Yeah.
at one point. They turned it into more of a comedy,
Uh-huh.
something quirky.
Yes.
Who knows what that movie is?
They
And
never had an actor
Never.
attached, right? Yeah.
never. And I guess they just took some shots at a script about a guy going backwards.
And
right?
is this in the time between being John Malkovich
It's
and adaptation?
straight off of Malkovich.
Okay.
And it kind of makes sense that it's like after Malkovich, they're Jones like, what do you want? Like,
So there
here
were-
are our
Well,
hottest.
being
like,
John
unproduced
Malkovich was
scripts.
another one of those
Right.
5
No
years.
one can crack
This
this.
can't be done. Right.
Does-
Want to
but-
crack something else?
Did Kaufman write an actual script for this, or
He
just kind of like
supposedly
look at it?
rewrote the script,
Okay.
but there's not much
Right.
about like whatever that
Right.
was.
Eric Roth is the first person post Swikord to do like a full page one,
Right.
go back to the adaptation, start over. Right. Everyone else is building on the Swikord draft.
He gets brought in to rewrite. Jones exits at that point.
Yeah.
Those two are not like a natural fit,
No.
I would say.
No.
But Eric Roth is really hot stuff still. I mean, he
Yeah.
remains hot stuff. He is a great screenwriter in my opinion, even though Gump is not really but like he's like
No.
he's an A-list pro
Yes.
writer.
Total
like,
pro. Yes.
Even though he's written some boring ass shit.
Probably one of the highest paid.
Yeah.
Him, like Steve's Alien, like,
Right.
people like
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
David Cab. It's that
Yeah.
tier of the 90s guys who just,
Richard LaGravenese.
By the time he's done with it, the movie has no resemblance to Benjamin Button apart from it's called Benjamin Button.
Sure. It's gotten
and
so
it's about
far
a backwards
afield.
man.
Right.
He calls the love interest Daisy as a tribute to the Great Gatsby.
Uh-huh.
There's some sort of nanny in the short story apparently who Queenie sort of like vaguely resembles, right?
But not a huge part.
And the mother apparently is in the story, obviously not in this. And in this story, like he is raised by his father.
Yes.
Mr. Button.
Yes.
Yes. Whereas obviously, Roth had his mom get diagnosed with cancer while he was writing the script. His dad died a couple years after that. He's still working on the script. He says this movie is all about that shit. Like, about these like tragedies, ordinary tragedies that like you go through in life. You know,
trying to make sense of these things in retrospect. Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. It makes sense it took this long to get made because you're just like, wow, what a concept. I could just imagine the movie that could be made off of that. And then you're like, what is the dramatic crux of this story? It is fascinating that this man was born this way and lives this way. But what's the story? And then you go like, well, Forrest Gump, similarly on paper, the guy just moves forward in time. If anyone's going to be able to crack this, have the Gump guy crack it. And what they were lucky to find is that the Gump guy, rather than just like repeating himself, was in the midst of working through some shit and poured all of that directly into it.
100%. That line where old lady Kate Blanchett says, "I'm curious," rather than "I'm afraid." He says that's something his mother said when she was in the hospital. Joan Didion's book, The Year of Magical Thinking. She says, which is about her husband dying. You have to go to this land of grief, whether you want to or not, and go experience grief. He's like, that's what I'm thinking about here. This is all I feel like this is all like backing up Griff's case.
Totally.
Like you're the prosecutor right now, sitting like with a big smile on your face.
It's interesting to think about the movie in that context because you were saying, Griffin, about how like he's such a cipher. Like this lead title character of this movie is kind of a blank. So it's really not a movie about him. It's a movie about everyone around him.
Totally.
Right? Like, and that's fascinating.
That's what's fascinating is that he's in so much more of the film than everyone else.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, it's not even like, well, Blanchett's right there by his side the whole film, so you can argue that she's actually the protagonist.
Right.
She's missing for long swaths of the movie.
Yeah.
She does not appear as, like...
And she is played by younger actors. Like, she's, you know.
Although, she dubbed all the younger actresses over.
Right.
But yes, you see her caked under pounds of makeup. Then it's younger actresses with her voice. It takes over an hour until she enters as kind of like
it's an hour.
Classic Blanchett.
I checked the time code.
Yeah,
it's an hour flat
to 19 or whatever, but still like her looking.
Kate Blanchett is Elle Fanning to this day. Right. That's a role she's doing.
True. Yes, and she's good at it.
She's great.
But yes, it is odd that like. I think in a certain way you need to view this movie through Julia Ormond as it is her interpretation of the story, but she's not in a ton of the film.
No, but
he is the guy.
It's about people beholding him and being like, I think the most crucial scene in the movie, for me as someone who just turned 40 and is dealing with a lot of like pretty maudlin, like, is that all there is, middle-aged stuff, is her in the swimming pool saying like, I hate getting older. Yeah. And it's so much about her like beholding him. And it's like, here's a guy who is living what we would all dream of. What if after all of the experience of adolescence, I looked so much better in my 40s than I did then, or whatever it is. And it's like, but it's not enough, and they kind of learn that through him. Oh, he's so lonely, whatever. Yeah. It's not really about Benjamin Button's trajectory. No. At all. No. It's about like, and then it ends with her taking care of him. She's in the last 15 minutes of the movie, and he's gone. Oh, he's gone. There as a baby. But can we talk about the law? Oh, where are you done? Sorry.
Fincher says it shows the fallacy in the idea that youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah.
Right.
Like to reaffirm your point. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and what you said, Richard, of like, if only I knew what I know now then when I was in that body or whatever. It's like when he gets
Rod Stewart or whatever.
Right. He's an idiot.
Yeah.
His dumbest decisions happen when he's at his physical peak. The thing where people say, like, man, if I could be 80 in the body of myself at 20.
Right. What would really be?
Right. He's like a selfish asshole.
So, not to direct the conversation, but like, I think that one of the elephants in the room, why this movie gets made fun of and became a meme and a joke is, I'm curious what you guys think. Does the logic of this actually work?
No.
Obviously it doesn't, right? But is that detrimental to it?
What do you mean by the logic?
Like obviously, because the question is, okay, he's born a tiny old man. Why doesn't he die a giant baby?
Right.
Look, here's the answer.
Right. That's
be
the big question. But baked within that is like,
obviously, I wish they had gone full Spirited Away. Like that would be great.
Like his body gets younger.
Jack.
I don't know.
Pulling up the room.
Just imagine like walking down the street like
Like the Stay Puft Marshmallow guy.
That's
Yeah.
the final scene of this movie. It's where Benjamin Button stomping across Central
Not
Park.
only is he getting younger, he's getting larger.
Julia Ormond looks out the window and he's just like lumbering toward her.
Oh, stop, Katrina.
Yeah.
No,
He
I
actually
mean,
broke the levees, unfortunately. Yeah.
He has to become a baby. Obviously,
Yes.
because that's the only way we can handle this.
Right.
We can handle an old man baby at the beginning because babies already look a little bit like old people.
But that's sort of the weird logic thing, as you said, is like they make this choice to not have him be the old man with a long beard being like, when do I get to leave this place? Right?
Right.
They make the choice to have him be a wrinkly baby.
Right.
Which at that point, everyone's like, I haven't seen a baby that looks like this, but it could be like progeria. It could be.
Yes.
There
Yes.
are conditions that exist in the world.
Right. You also, right, exactly. Like he would have been seen as freakish in some way,
Right.
maybe, but it's not just like, oh my God.
There are
like put him in a
analogs
lab.
in real science of
Right.
just, ailments, conditions, diseases that make people age rapidly, or at least the illusion of it, right?
Right.
You're like, what's weird is that he like gets younger and hotter. And then you get to that point where you're like, and then what happened? Does he like turn into sperm? Like, is he
Right.
the
Where does
We-
life begin? Actually,
they
Griffin,
very-
I want you to answer that political question.
They very wisely do not answer that question.
But even the giant baby thing, right? Like, if you were actually treating this as hard science, right? What should happen is whenever he's at his like physical tallest, right?
Mhm.
At that point, his brain should start like going down.
Right.
But in the adult body.
Right.
It doesn't make sense that he would start shrinking in that same way. I know that like old people get smaller.
Yeah, but they don't become
Right.
And like I think the thing is they add the dementia thing is like, oh, it's like a baby.
Yes.
But like, are old people with dementia really playing with blocks? Like, like Benjamin is maybe, I don't know.
I
But,
think they just skip through this.
But I also think that's the other thing he's getting at is it's like those are the two most similar
Right,
states are when
exactly.
you're at your absolute oldest and your absolute youngest.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, the one that really got it, watching it this time that really stuck in my head was when he's probably physically in his 60s, 70s,
Uh-huh.
but like an adolescent in mind.
Right.
Sure.
Is when he goes to the brothel
Yes,
and
meets
the
his
woman's
dad
like,
for the first time.
whoa,
Yeah.
like you really wore me out. It's like, no, but he's still physically old.
Right.
Yes.
I know he might be I just don't know where the physiognomy, like I just don't know how that all works, and maybe it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have to accept
But I think back in the day, people made fun of it because of the giant baby question.
Kumail Nanjiani had the routine
Benjamin
that was
Button,
like
it's about
right.
old man turned into baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if Brad Pitt old man baby? Like I'm just like, what? Yes, I'm gonna make fun of this.
Kumail had the routine of like, what do you mean you've never been to a doctor? People need to study you.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the visual effects. Are you guys aware of this commercial?
The Orville Redenbacher commercial. Yes. Yep. Was this a Super Bowl commercial?
I think it might have been. It was 2007. I think it was early 07.
I remember it would have been the Oscars or the Super Bowl or some event like that I was watching with my family. I think even in a party setting with like other family
and
friends.
I think there's maybe one other one where he's like at a table or
Yes.
something. This was
That
done by
commercial-
Digital Domain
Yes.
as proof of concept for
Right.
this movie.
That commercial comes
Oh,
up.
okay, I see.
This is where I remember reading this article that was in the New York Times.
and it looks
in 06.
perfect.
Yes. I think the first of these aired in 06.
It said 07, but I
Okay.
mean, I don't,
There was
don't
a
fucking
full
know.
campaign, but I'm at some family friends sitting around watching TV. That ad comes up. Everyone goes like, "Oh!" Like it was similar to that feeling of that like uneasy ad where they made Christopher Reeves walk again in the 90s. Do you remember that ad?
Oh, geez,
That
that's
played
ghoulish.
during the Oscars, and it was about like medical advancements, and it just felt a little ghoulish.
Yeah.
Or the
Like
like
Fred Astaire for
Fred
the
Astaire
vacuum
dancing with the
commercial.
vacuum. It was
Yeah.
in that mode where it's like, what are they doing
Yeah.
here? And I was so perplexed by it. And then I think I read on Slash Film or whatever a week later, like, you want to hear something weird? David Fincher directed that commercial.
Right,
And everyone was like, what the fuck is this? And then it came out of like, yes, he has used this commercial, this bizarre thing of like, why I know Orville Redenbacher was the spokesperson. He was a likable on-camera personality during the heyday, but no one was like, gotta bring him back.
No.
The brand's been dying without him as the spokesperson. Why are you investing this much money and this much tech into it? And the
Right.
answer was he was like, I'm basically stealing money from Orville Redenbacher to figure out whether this film is makeable or not.
Which is interesting because obviously in Panic Room, Fincher's doing, and Fight Club, all those kind of camera digital, like we're going to go inside the wires or whatever. But I don't think of him as like a Zemeckis.
No.
Well,
Like he's not. But
that's
this was his
fair.
kind of Zemeckis-y, going back to the Forrest Gump thing,
Yes.
his like big Zemeckis project.
It's obviously. I think there are people who literally think Robert Zemeckis made this movie.
Yes.
Like, like they and have to be told.
Right.
They have to be sat
It's
down
David
and told.
Fincher.
David Fincher.
And they must be told.
Right.
Zemeckis did make Mank, though, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, okay.
Right. I mean, the guy. He went back in time, and this is grandpa.
For Meg's mom. Mama
He's
Meg.
got a DeLorean.
Yeah.
First order of
Look,
business.
we
I
just-
go fuck Mrs. Meg.
We just have to establish for anyone listening. Yes, Robert Zemeckis went back in time.
Yes.
He had sex with Mank's mom.
This is hard science. It's fact.
This is in the congressional record.
He was
Look
going to
it
be
up.
called Zank, but then they said that's kind of ugly.
Oh my goodness.
No, you are right, but that's part of it. A friend of the podcast, Drew McWeeny, was saying to us, like, he remembers the Scuttlebutt at this point in time. This is one of those great unmade scripts. And even when the Roth draft came in, which Gary Ross almost did.
Gary Ross was at some point under consideration for this
Yeah.
job, which makes sense. It's got Pleasantville vibes. Like
Totally.
it's, it makes sense.
But even at this point where, like, computer graphics have advanced, they were like, I don't know if you can pull this off, you know?
It's cutting edge shit.
Post Gollum was the first time where they were suddenly like, all these scripts that we used to think were unmakeable, maybe the tech is there. And even still, people were like uneasy about it because it's like, it's the main character, it's the whole movie. He's got to go through 20 different states, all this sort of shit. And the Scuttlebutt was like, Fincher might have finally cracked this. But I do think in that way that's more often the Zemeckis, Peter Jackson,
Yeah.
what becomes of Ang Lee trap of like, I need to make this movie to pioneer the technology to hand off to a generation of filmmakers
Yeah.
is not usually how Fincher worked.
I don't think he has that sort of like Promethean vision of his career.
No.
Like, yeah.
No, and
But he's a big nerd.
he is.
Yeah.
And I've heard tell of him like emailing other filmmakers with like, hey, I got a new camera. Like, if you
Yeah.
want to fuck around with it, like come over. Like that kind of shit.
Yeah, he's also, look, he talks a lot about how like
My mom said you could come over.
just sort of like
pizza,
the rise of like 90s, early 2000s auteurs.
Yeah.
He's like, I think that really comes out of how robust the music video industry was for so long, where there was stupid amount of money going around for filmmakers to cut their teeth on in a way that was more creative and longer form than commercials and with a little more freedom, but you got to experiment with all this different technology where like current day filmmakers will talk about that. When Todd Field isn't making a movie for 15 years and he's directing car commercials, he's like, I go into it saying, this is my excuse to try out this
camera,
crane.
this lens, this fucking totally.
Right. Maybe this
Right.
isn't creative expression, but I'm like building muscles on something.
Right.
Whereas music videos, it also was creative expression. And so these guys, some of them were all style over substance, but they all were able to hit the ground running somewhat when they started making movies. And Fincher smartly in this situation goes like, I need to find a commercial I can use to cut my teeth for this film in the same
Right.
way.
Now, did he also direct that Six Flags commercial
Yes,
with
he did,
the
of
old
course.
man
Well, Benjamin
dancing?
Button's in that.
Yes.
Of course, that's
Yeah.
him.
Oh,
Right.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's
the
how they
real,
cast
the,
him.
the real
Venga bus is coming.
because Benjamin Button is based on the real the real Buzz Lightyear or Benjamin Button, and that's who's in the Six Flags.
Right, that's
commercial.
the real guy.
Brad Pitt is playing the
Wow.
real guy.
He would catch the Venga bus
Yeah.
home every day down Bourbon Street.
Yeah. Ben, ask me how many flags there were.
a streetcar
over
named
Texas.
called Venga.
Griffin, how many flags were there?
6, but they look a lot bolder.
Oh, I've been to Six Flags. Those flags don't look too bold.
They're pretty bold.
I don't think anyone's cleaned them in a while.
Bold flags.
Look, obviously, this film shot in New Orleans right
Yeah.
after Katrina. They thought that Katrina would ruin their chances of
Yeah.
making it in New Orleans. Instead, New Orleans was like, please come.
Yeah.
Like, we want people
Ushering
here.
in a real era of
Yes.
that. Yeah.
It's one of
Yes.
several things that Brad Pitt remains in litigation over, deep litigation. But he was one of the stars who, in the wake of Katrina, was like, we need to do what we can to revitalize this place. And so it was his big push, I believe, to be like, I want to set it there and I want to film there, actually film there.
It was originally going to be set in Baltimore.
Right.
But then David Simon was like, stay off my turf.
Yes.
No. Eric Roth, Fincher, read the similarities to Eric Roth.
Mm.
Instead of an ordinary man in extraordinary circumstances, I thought of Benjamin as an extraordinary man in ordinary circumstances. Just to sort of reinforce what you guys were saying. And you know, he's like, the movie's experiential. There's no backstory.
Yeah.
Like, it's mundane. You know, there's kisses, hangovers, like you get dumped and all that stuff. But like the only thing that's crazy really is that he backwards man.
Right. The part of
Right.
Fincher that's obsessed with process and how things are done and depicting the actual process on camera rather than doing the movie version of it comes through and being like, the process of this man's life is all the shit that happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all these little chance encounters and periods he goes through and all of that.
And it puts as much weight in some ways on a ship crashing into a U-boat in the middle of the sea as it
Right.
does these happy years we spent sleeping on a mattress in an apartment in New Orleans.
It's all of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Pitt's other huge thing is I want to play as much of this person as I can.
Yeah.
Like, do not hand it off to other people.
How much is it? It is him as the old man, like right? Like it's
his face.
It's body doubles.
and is he
until
going like
is-
this, and they're kind of shrinking him, or is that like
They had
grafted his face?
multiple body doubles.
Right.
And then it was a lot of him sitting in a chair surrounded by 100 cameras,
Right.
his face painted totally green rather than having the dots.
going.
And he would act it all out. Because he
Right.
talked about like he hired different actors at different ages, different body types
Right.
and whatever. And one of the guys who's sort of playing the brothel age Benjamin was an older man who was like in his 70s but had mime training. And he was like, the guy was a really good performer because his background was in miming. His motions were like too exaggerated. He put too much of a point on them.
Right.
And Pitt's a pretty still actor, and especially with the way he was doing it in The Volume or whatever, the facial expressions didn't match, so we had to go back and reshoot stuff. So yeah, it's body doubles that he's then doing his face, because they even say the was his first scene, his first time on set with Taraji P. Henson is the scene where he comes back home,
Sure.
and he's an adult,
Right.
Right.
because he was never present
Like, he never
on set.
was on set
Right.
for these scenes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Does
He
Brad
was off stage going 7 years old.
and Brad Pitt thinks that's what old men who sound like? I mean, we don't even see Benjamin smoking. Well, actually, why would that make sense though? Because he was born with that voice.
You're looking for logic where there probably.
The
isn't.
voice is great. Don't
He
get me
should
wrong,
start
I love
smoking
it,
when he's
but,
a
like,
baby. That's when he should.
He should come out with like the guy should Mr. Button should look into the crib and this little wrinkled thing is like smoking a little cigarette.
Yes.
That's what it should be.
But yeah, no, I know another thing Fincher said is that he wanted, I think, down to him being a child, a tween, a kid,
Yeah.
a baby, it's still to be Pitt
Right.
digitally modified. And he was like, we ran out of budget.
Well,
Basically, the last 12 years were more than we could spend.
but even the last time when he walks into the dance studio,
Yeah.
and briefly meets his now
Yeah.
somewhat grown daughter, it's interesting that they choose to do that with light
Yes.
instead of because I had forgotten this until I watched it now and was like, oh, I remember being disappointed because I was like, oh, they're going to digitally make him Thelma and Louise, Brad.
Yeah.
River runs through it, Brad. That's going to be so exciting.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, oh no, it's the same guy, just a different haircut, and he's kind of in shadow.
Right.
Maybe that was a budget thing,
It's
or I
essentially
don't know.
the age,
Yeah.
but yes, it's
But maybe
milder
if you're a big
than-
movie star, you'd like, I don't
Yes.
really want to remind people of what I looked like 10 years ago.
Totally. and
I am at perfection
yes.
now.
Well, that's the other thing. It is
Yeah.
like the movie has to be about this one moment of the two of them in the middle.
Yeah.
So you do kind of have to argue that the age he was when he shot this film was his perfect age.
Right.
Even if he's going to look more angelic as he ages
But it's
down
kind
another
of.
10,
I
15
think it's
years.
kind of his perfect age. I think it is.
Kind of is.
I mean, like, or whatever. Also, it's
Have you
just
seen
like,
Meet Joe Black recently? That was pretty good age.
Wow.
Fantastic.
But like, when it suddenly turns into a fucking luxury watch commercial and he's like, riding a yacht around with sunglasses on,
He gets
I'm
very
just like,
stylish.
Get
Yeah.
out of here!
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the fucking best.
I remember Fincher saying that in interviews at the time of like, this is the great magic trick of the movie is we spend like $100 million on special effects for the first hour and a half
Brad
of the
Pitt
movie.
is the effect, yes.
And then the effect is the moment you finally get to pull everything off
Put a
of him
leather jacket
and
on
just
him.
have him walk in and go like, holy
With a great
shit.
haircut, or when he goes to see Daisy in the Parisian hospital,
Yeah.
and he's wearing this like kind of caramel colored overcoat, and you're like, Jesus Christ, like Benjamin
Yeah.
Button has good style.
He's a cool fucking guy. I mean,
would
honestly,
you be if you did all that?
I think his tugboat look is his best look, though.
Yeah.
Sort of stringy, long hair and the flat, the cap.
Yeah.
In the commentary, Fincher referred to him as looking like Barry Levinson. I thought was
There you
really
go.
What he
funny.
looks like.
And when he's born, he kind of looks like Sam.
Hell yeah.
But
Okay, wait. I want to say a
Yes,
couple.
sorry,
things.
we're back at
Taraji P. Henson.
Yes.
Amazing.
Obviously, her first appearance is in Big Baby Boy, which we've discussed on this podcast. Her
Right.
first screen appearance, but it was Hustle and Flow that puts her on Fincher's radar. She's
Right.
amazing
Look,
in that movie.
Singleton really made a concerted effort to try to single-handedly make her a movie star, and he does Baby Boy, puts her in Hustle and Flow as a producer, puts her in Four Brothers. It doesn't totally stick, even though I think certain wise people were ahead of the curve on her. This is the movie where she finally lands. You can, ask a bunch of questions about she gave 3 great performances in John Singleton movies playing very different characters. The second she plays an old housekeeper mother.
A kindly mom. Yes.
Right. And the type of role that Oscars
have
would
been paying attention to for 100 years,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
She is good.
She's
She's such a
undeniably very
warm, wonderful presence.
Yes. I mean, him calling his shots on her and Mahershala, and then also you think this is Jared Harris a year before Mad Men. He had done a lot
Totally.
of work up
yeah,
until
I mean, Jared
this point.
Harris, right, is a guy
But
without a doubt. And
The year
obviously he's
after
the son
this
of a
is the
famous
next
actor.
stage of his career that I think levels up.
Yeah.
And even Elle Fanning is a pretty early pick.
Yeah, definitely.
He's got 4 casting choices in this movie that are have paid off.
who plays
well.
the old lady in the hospital bed with Julia Ormond? God, kidding. Is she good at that old stuff?
She's
guess so.
fine. It's the most risible part of the movie in a way, just because it feels like something from a UCB sketch. Like,
tell you a story.
That diary over there, do you mind?
It's very
opening it,
home for Purim,
Yes.
100%.
I do think it's maybe the most impressive old age makeup
It's
I've
very
ever
good.
The
seen.
makeup
makeup.
is really
They
good.
The
also
makeup is
wisely,
astonishing.
They wisely keep her basically always prone. She's always
Yes.
lying down. And so you don't have to deal with her moving around too much to complicate things.
But I look at the neck and I'm just like, that's
it's good neck.
astonishing.
Yeah,
But you
what
love
about
waddle.
what about the
I
neck,
love waddle.
the back? Sorry,
Yeah,
horrible.
And
then
two
the
other
other-
body
yeah,
parts
yeah,
I'm not going to mention by name.
Yep.
Yes, but
Jesus
yes,
Christ.
this is the thing that gets Taraji the Oscar nomination and finally kind of puts her on the path in Hollywood's eyes.
Mahershala Ali, credited by his longer
Mahershala
name,
Shabazz.
which I used to because I'd already seen him in a few things before this. I'm
This
trying to
was
think.
definitely the first I saw him because I remember thinking that guy's good, and then seeing the name in the end credits and going, "Holy
it's
shit!"
so ridiculous to say this, but yes, his name being so long was
Yes.
so interesting to me. I guess he just done a lot of television.
He was on
he'd popped up on Crossing Jordan and CSI and stuff like that.
right. Was he on 4400?
He's on the 4400,
That's the one.
yes,
Okay,
that's
right.
another
He was
one.
on
And-
that for years.
And he doesn't shorten his name until Place Beyond the Pines, years and years later. Mockingjay, he's in that.
He's talked about how it was a point of pride for him that
That's
when people
fair.
said, "Of course you have to shorten your name," he dug his heels in, and that he ultimately said, "I don't need to change my name to Bob Smith,
right.
but this might be a little self-destructive."
Right.
And it is wild that he chops the final 25% of his first name off and immediately has the transcendent year where people are like, who the fuck is this guy? But I mean, look, Fincher puts him from this into House of Cards, which is one of the things that definitely levels him up. This directly leads to his full anointment.
He's so good in this movie.
He's
It's great.
he's one of
He's always good.
we talked about it in a different episode recently. I forget why, how absurd it is that he won the Green Book Oscar, but he's also just undeniably one of the best living actors in my money.
Yeah.
He is.
Even if I'm not always excited by everything he does, he is.
Well, the thing about him in Green Book is he's really good in it.
he's really
you know.
fucking good in it.
So is Vigo.
I have no complaints about his performance in that movie.
Yeah.
It's just a lead performance. It's insane to give to him that quickly after.
Yeah, and also he took Sam Elliott's Oscar away.
And Richard E. Grant's Oscar.
Those are the two.
You had two guys.
Two lifelong character actor guys.
Flip it to
Yeah.
either
Is it
one.
true that you guys are going to retape the Power of the Dog episode with Sam Elliott?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a lot of thoughts.
It's going to be 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
I have more to say, fellas.
The fuck is this?
And he leaves.
I don't want
There's
to
me
go.
sarsaparilla. No, we're gonna retape it with Vigo in character from Green Book.
Yeah, you're not gonna be able to make it. I
What
think he says
the fuck is he doing? I don't know what he would say.
a mouthful of pizza.
Um,
But yeah, no, Mahershala he's great in this, and like, I don't know. I was the commentary was interesting. Fincher talked more about the psychology of these two characters than any other characters in the movie.
mhm.
And I think it's because, like, the first chunk of it, you do see a lot of it through their eyes. Benjamin's so passive when he's young. He's still understanding the world that they are the characters you're really relating to at the beginning. And he was like, this thing of, like, she has a better position in the house, you know?
Yeah.
That she holds the power, that they are together, but they live separately.
Yeah.
You know, that there's sort of like this very kind of modern couple in a lot of ways, and that he is disapproving. I mean, I forget what his line is, but like, he's so freaked out by Benjamin Button as a baby
Yeah.
and so wary of her taking him in, of like, what's this going to be the next 20 years of your life?
Right.
What's this kid going to turn
And
into?
made like in a split second.
Do you
Baby's on the
need to
stairs.
burden
Yeah.
yourself with all of
But
this?
she is kind of like, he could die tomorrow too.
Totally.
Like, she does have that. Yeah.
And the second she says that, he basically is like, I'm 100% in.
Yeah.
You know, he
Yeah.
tries to talk her out of it.
And I think that like a lesser piece of writing, a more obvious piece of writing, would have him be an early quarter of the movie antagonist.
Yes.
Like, Mama loved me, but this guy was always kind of
right.
whatever.
That she has, and that's the thing. Like, when
Yeah.
she has a child, when she announces
Yeah.
she's pregnant, and you're briefly like, oh, is this going to kind of play some sort
Yeah.
of jealousy note?
No.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's just sort of a moving on. Like,
Yeah.
it's another signpost for him that it's time to leave the coop a little bit.
But the other
Yeah.
thing Fincher talks about is like a lot of Benjamin's passivity as a character, him being the sort of observer
His
wallflower.
buttoninity,
Right. Yes. His deep buttoninity, him being 7 but looking a lot older, is that like he was well raised.
Yeah.
Like he is like a kind
Yeah.
of old fashioned Southern gentleman
Yeah.
of like proper manners, right?
Yeah.
He is sort of like a polite to the point of absurdity. And he said when he would screen the movie for Paramount, they'd be like, why is like Taraji so mean? She's playing all these scenes so mean. And he's like, she's not mean. She's like firm in a way that she's a good parent. Not in like
Yeah.
a tough love way,
Yeah.
but she's like really trying to teach him the world. And he said it wasn't until the scene where he goes back and sees her again and she's so warm and loving
Yeah.
that they were like, well, why could she have been like this the whole movie? And he's like, yeah, because now she doesn't need to raise him.
And no parent is like that all the time.
Right.
You know, like that's
She's
a
a great
reunion.
parent.
That's a happy
She's
reunion.
like, no, that's his point. He was like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really crucial that the two of them are great parents.
Yeah.
And that the time spent with them in the beginning of the movie sets up how this guy behaves for the rest of the film.
And that everything surrounding them, I mean, minus Phyllis Somerville kind of yelling at him about
Yeah.
being under the table with Elle Fanning, which is a great Dave Matthews album. Did I hit that joke? But
Table with Phyllis Somerville.
but he has this wonderful education of being around old people, and it's mostly like, age isn't anything to be afraid of or whatever, but also, yes, it is sad, and he gets this incredible perspective on death.
They give him perspective.
And then the rest of his of the movie is in some ways him teaching that to people in the audience and people he meets.
Yeah.
The way he consoles Jared Harris as he's dying on a ship is not like, no, you're gonna be fine. The helicopter's coming. He's like, no, you're going. Yeah, it's true, but like, there's a nice place waiting for you. You're gonna, he has this like really rational view of all this that is because of the upbringing. And you would expect the beginnings of this movie to be like House of Horrors.
Yeah.
Raised in a Gothic orphanage, and it's like the complete opposite of that.
like 10 years ago, it must have been, I went to a fucking Rosh Hashanah dinner with my great aunt and uncle who I was very close to growing up, who had moved to Florida by this point. And it was them and their friend who had also just moved into this retirement community with them. All three of these people are dead now, right? And my great aunt and uncle were together for like 65 years, 70 years. And this guy's wife, who they had grown up with, both of them in the same neighborhood, had like just died. And my great uncle very matter-of-factly say like, and this is Jerry. Jerry's one of our oldest friends. He grew up around the block, and his wife was Cynthia, and she went to school with us. And he just looked at me and he went, she was the love of my life. I will never care about anyone as much as I cared about her. She was the most extraordinary woman I ever knew. And she died 6 months ago, and I've been so sad since. Can you pass the mashed potatoes?
There you go.
And it was like one run-on sentence.
Yeah.
And it was said with emotion, but it was also just like that point where people get to that point in their lives, and you're like, you lose the most important people every day.
Yeah.
They're just all dropping off like flies.
Yeah.
But you imagine that happening if you were in preschool, right? Or in grade school.
Right, all
and if
your
you're like,
quote unquote friends.
once a
right,
week, a friend gets trucked away. And Benjamin Button is a child. He has the mentality of a child, but he's growing up in a retirement home where everyone else has this, like, them's the breaks. People get carted off.
Yeah.
And it teaches him the sort of, I don't know, the ephemerality.
Yeah, and it's
Of
all
life.
it's not Veda Sultanfuss and my girl growing up in the fucking funeral home. That's a little too extreme. I also think
Because
that
it doesn't curse him. It doesn't make him dark.
for all of his like innate sort of high-mindedness or sort of like evolved view of death. I like that the movie also, in little ways, like kind of is like he's kind of annoying, like because us who are aging the other direction are like, okay, yeah, great, we get it, like it's nothing to be scared of, but it is scary,
Yes.
Like, and I think that's part of why Daisy, who is a really well drawn kind of blithe artist character, is also just like a little bit like, get out of my face, man, like I can't have this, like
she's not ready for him.
You're too
for
enlightened,
a lot of it.
right?
Yeah,
And I think a lot of us aren't.
My baby was not born 80 years old. I'm willing to admit.
Born
this.
baby age.
She was born baby age. But like those early scenes too where he's just by her bed and he's so helpless. It does remind me of that. It is so universal, just like, the bond you have just caring for that. Oh God, this movie like really fucked me up at the end.
David?
Yes.
Boo.
Ah!
I know.
Oh no.
Pretty scary, right?
Yes.
Spooky season's here.
Oh,
I had to get you in the mood.
Yes, now I'm in the mood.
I had to test you out, because if you're going to get that scared of me saying boo, how are you going to make it through scary movies, David?
Like Boo and Medea Halloween?
Well, one of the scariest films. Only beaten by Boo 2.
Right. Even twice the scares.
Look, I run into people, I see friends of mine, and they go, hey, what are your hot recs? Month of October, I like to watch all scary movies. People like to really theme their consumption this month, right?
Okay. Sure.
And so you want to throw out like the class. Oh my God, you should watch Halloween. You should watch Nightmare on Elm Street. You should watch Hereditary.
Right.
No problem. Not on Netflix. Can't add them to the queue.
Well, but there's a way around that.
What?
My
How?
favorite app of all time.
ExpressVPN.
That's right.
It's so fast, like this.
I mean, you use it, right?
I've been using it a lot.
You can change your online location and trick or treat Netflix into showing you movies and TV shows that aren't available here in the U.S. You can get thousands of extra shows. You apparently were using it all the time recently.
I was using UK Disney Plus to watch John Grisham thrillers, a thing that exists over there that they would never dare put on American Disney Plus.
Look, you just open your TV, you switch your location with one click, you hit refresh, and then you're wherever you want to be.
It is truly so easy. It's one of those things where I avoided using it for a while because I thought, they say it's easy, but it's going to be
It'll mess with things. It'll be hard to use.
It's so simple. I started really using it when I was in Scotland for all my streaming that month, when there was American stuff I wanted to watch, and now I'm addicted to it. Just hopping around.
Some weird ones. Apparently, Lord of the Rings is on Australian Netflix.
Cool.
Top Gun's on German Netflix.
Yeah.
Parasite's on Korean Netflix. That one's less weird. That one actually isn't too shocking.
Don't you want to just stream a mile in someone else's shoes? Imagine what it feels like to open up the old Netflix. Sometimes it's just fun to look.
It also works on everything.
It works on
Phones,
everything.
laptops, tablets, TVs. And it's not just Netflix. It works with any streaming service. Like I said, Disney Plus, BBC iPlayer, Shudder, you name it. So get your money's worth and get 3 extra months of ExpressVPN for free when you go to expressvpn.com/check. That's EXPRESSVPN.com/check. expressvpn.com/check.
David, 3 free months? That deal is so good, it's spooky. So another thing Fincher kept saying in the commentary, because we're getting to the Daisy meeting,
Sure.
is like, my read on this movie is fundamentally that this is not a story about them being destined for each other.
No, because that would be ludicrous.
These are not
Yeah,
star-crossed lovers.
He's always loved her.
Yes.
But that's a little different.
But that's what he said. He said it's basically two people who, whether they know it or not, almost non-verbally made a promise to each other when they were young. And it's about how this promise ties them in their minds to each other. But it's not that I think they could only be together or they were destined to always be together. And I think Paramount really wanted that for it to be this like epic faded romance, and he kept on pushing back up
Jenny
against that.
Jenny running
Paramount
across the
definitely
reflecting pool.
sells it that way as best they can.
Totally,
with them on the
yeah.
poster and all that.
But like when we get to the scene, Paris, the accident, the sort of butterfly effect of her legs getting fucked up at the car crash and everything. They were like, see, this is what we're saying. Do this. The world is bringing them together. And it's like, yeah, but when he goes to visit her, she's like, get out of here.
Right. I'm not ready for you yet, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is that thing of like, there's something, she is an old soul, right? Which is helped by the fact that you have an adult woman voicing it over Dakota Fanning.
Right.
Elle Fanning, excuse me. They recognize something in each other. They have some connection.
Yeah.
But it is that like, it's like the ex you never got over. Or not even, it's the person where the circumstances never lined up.
Right. And can you ever go home again?
Totally.
You know, because going to him is, in her view, an admission of defeat.
Yeah.
And defeat is given to her not by her own choice, you know, unfortunately.
Right.
But even then, she's like, I don't, you know.
No,
like,
you're totally right. Like, he is kind of too familiar in a way.
And I think a thing that like crystallizes the fact that they're going to be hung up on each other forever, not that they're destined together, but that they're sort of like stuck being fixated on each other, is Phyllis Somerville's reaction to them being under the table, where it's like an incredibly innocent thing to them that is treated with such disgust and paranoia and disdain, where they were like, well, if you're making a big deal out of this, what is actually going on here?
Right.
You know?
And I think it's interesting because I feel like, I mean, obviously in Forrest Gump, he doesn't really have the capacity to understand. He's you know, he understands Jenny in a way and that he loves her in a way. But I think in this movie, I feel like I would have expected kind of love to re-enter his life.
Sure.
But like he pursues her in a very direct way. It's not like we met up and like, oh, how you been? Oh, I see you're dating this guy. Like, okay. He's like upfront. He's like, no, I came here to think, I thought I was going to sweep you off your feet. Like, I like how direct that is.
But also, it's fascinating that every time she's kind of leading the scene, and then there's the moment where she goes, I'm sorry, I've been talking about myself all night. You haven't said anything. He's like, well, I like to listen. And then when she finally passes the baton to him, he's like, here I stand before you once again asking for a hand in marriage.
Right.
She's like, fuck off. And he disappears for another 7 years.
Yeah.
That's
I think she's such a well-drawn character. I mean, Blanchett turns out can act. Like where you're like, I mean, we all are in the arts. Like I fucking know those people. Like who are like, oh my god, it's so good to see you, and then talk for 30 minutes and have not even asked you if they can like hang your coat up.
She gets that about that character exactly.
How do you really? Do you think so? Where was she about to go? Was she about to do Sydney Theater
CB?
Company? Yeah.
Well, she's just coming off her Oscar for The Aviator, golly.
Right.
And her near win for I'm Not There.
That's
the year before this.
The year before this?
Yeah.
Because Aviator is, of course, 04, right? And then
I
I'm Not
find
There
it
is 07.
Kind of astonishing she didn't get nominated for this. I remember, especially for a movie that was so Oscar rich.
Yeah, but she didn't have the buzz. Like people, it's because this movie disappointed, quote unquote.
I just remember thinking this performance in particular was undeniable. And it's equally fascinating that Pitt got nominated for such a passive character that they usually don't go for, but it's the special effects of the thing.
It's partly that, but it's also partly not to be an Oscar overreader or whatever. Like Pitt had not been nominated since
12 Monkeys.
12 Monkeys.
Babel
it was
was
time,
the one people thought was kind of close.
Right, but it was sort of time to be like, yes.
Forgot they had done that together already at this point too.
They had. I mean, almost everyone in this movie.
Babel was what, 2006?
Yeah. And Kate, had won an Oscar and been nominated multiple times, and I think they're probably like, we can give you a pass. Like Frozen, Melissa Leo for Frozen River is the surprise nominee that year, which is a good nom. Angelina
Jolie, Changeling, right?
Jolie and Changeling, she's sort of sneaking in because that movie had kind of like up and down buzz.
That's the slot that I thought should have been Blanchett's.
I think.
Well, the thing about the Blanchett is that
Jolie's bad.
up until rewatching it,
that movie's not good. She's not good.
I recommend rewatching it.
I'll
I recommend
fucking
rewatching it.
rewatch
It's the beginning of the railroading. It's his first movie about railroading. I'm not kidding. I'm honestly really serious. It really, the train is pulling into the station because I was like, well, he loves stories about railroading. And then I was like, wait, no, this is the beginning of Eastwood's love affair with railroadies. She got railroaded. She fucking got railroaded.
Yeah,
by the
I
way,
don't deny
because
that.
They gave her a boy
that wasn't her
who
boy.
didn't have a foreskin, and she was like, "My kid was uncircumcised."
That's the
and they
other
were
reason
like,
you liked
He
it.
probably got circumcised.
You like that it's a
Things
foreskin
happen,
thriller.
It's just so crazy that she's like, my kid had a different penis. And they're like, penises change all the time. You crazy old lady.
Hey, pulled it out.
He's got a Benjamin Dix disease. I don't know.
Like, that's how
Stick on
railroaded her ass was.
Yeah.
Was she couldn't even be like, look, the one fundamental thing with guys where it's one or the other. It's you know, it went from a Y to an N, you know?
Uh-huh.
And she got railroaded, man.
She got
By fucking
railroaded.
Burn Notice. Burn Notice
She
is
get
her.
railroaded.
Sorry.
I was going to say about the
She's
Blanchett.
good in this though, Blanchett. It's just kind of like it's Kate Blanchett. She's
Wait,
fine.
I'm sorry.
Like,
It's Hathaway. It's Jolie. It's Leo. The winner that year is.
go ahead.
Why am I not thinking of who this is? This is the Slumdog year.
Is it Winslet?
Oh, it's the Reader.
Yes.
Right.
And then who's the fifth nominee?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Hathaway, Jolie, Leo, Winslet. Sorry, where the fuck are the Oscars? I just had them.
Jeez Louise.
They went away because I got so pumped up.
About
That
getting
fucking
railroaded.
changeling.
You were saying something you want to get railed by Jeffrey Donovan? What?
Oh, well, the fifth nominee. Oof.
What?
I have some doubts about this nomination.
Oh, it's your least favorite performance.
Oh.
Meryl Streep in doubt.
But I mean, she was pretty much guaranteed that nom. Like,
That is not a field that you're like, well, Blanchett was going to be on the outside because
it's
the
not
competition was so stiff.
maybe it's not a field that you would say that about, but there's certainly big names.
Sure.
You know, like Jolie, Streep. These are big names.
But I think a couple huge names with soft nominations.
Blanchett
One
didn't
anointment
even,
nomination.
Blanchett didn't even get a Golden Globe nom.
Yeah,
Do you want to know the Golden Globe nominees?
Yes, please. In drama for 2008?
It's 4 of the ones we just said, and then Kristen Scott Thomas.
Because doubts and comedy.
Oh, and I know I loved you.
I've loved you so long.
Right.
Which was sort of a surprise. Not a bad movie.
French language one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has this had Oscar buzz done that movie yet?
They should.
That's a quintessential.
David,
Yeah.
can you imagine if Kristen Scott Thomas directed a bad movie?
One of the worst fucking things. One of those things where 2 minutes in, I was like, uh-oh.
David and I just got
But
back
then
from
you said she
Toronto.
comes in at the end and does
No,
10 minutes and proves herself as the Kristen Scott Thomas of acting.
The whole point, I can just imagine, this is Kristen Scott Thomas in a movie called North Star. She directed it. It's clearly about her own life.
And we're all rooting for
Premiere
her.
to Toronto.
I love Kristen Scott Thomas.
Yeah,
It was
she's-
at Toronto.
she's great.
And it's got Scarlett Johansson, who she's now worked with 3 times, Horse Whisperer, Other Berlin Girl, and this.
Wild.
But it's nice that they clearly have a
Yeah,
lifelong
sure.
connection.
Yeah.
Sienna Miller and unnamed British actress who's very good, whose name I forget.
Oh,
who
it's
is-
It's Emily Beecham.
who's
Emily
very good.
Beecham.
Yeah.
Yes.
A Cannes Best Actress winner.
Yeah.
Poor
Yeah.
ScarJo is doing an English accent next to the Sienna
Playing
and
an
Beecham.
aircraft carrier captain.
Correct.
Right?
A gay aircraft carrier captain.
Okay.
Normal.
Of course.
But like every time she has to,
What's
Sienna
her
Miller
ethnicity?
is good. and Beecham is good, and they are speaking in there, and then Scarlett Johansson will be like, "Oh, bloody hell, mates," and I'm just like, "Oh God, this is so rough." And then Kristen Scott Thomas plays their mom, her own mother.
Yeah.
which I assume,
Sure.
and I can just see her on set being like, "Yes, no, I'll be over here. I'll have a couple scenes." And every
Do a
time
line
it's just
or two.
fucking. There's a hydro cannon on her back.
Yeah.
That's what you said. You said she's just hydroblasting everyone off the screen.
She's
is what you
so
texted.
good.
Yeah.
I mean, also you're just dying in this movie, so her just being kind of funny, you're like, thank God, a professional has arrived, God, that movie stunk.
Yeah, I heard
Did
it
you
was.
see it?
No, because I heard it was bad.
Fucking Katie Rich brought me to it. The only one TIFF mistake I made was that one.
Well, never listen to her.
Listen,
No, that's not true. She told me
no.
to see his 3 daughters, and I wept like a baby.
I also did.
Anyway, Kristen Scott Thomas. What else? Golden Globes.
Kristen. Oh, that's it though. It's
They put
Winslet,
Hathaway in
Hathaway.
comedy? No, who they put?
In drama. Oh, who was in comedy?
Or
Oh,
was it?
It was Angelina for Dick Swap.
No, excuse me. Wasn't it
Leo is the one who
Winslet
comes out of
in
nowhere.
lead for Revolutionary Road
Correct.
and then Reader for support?
That's right.
Correct.
That's
But
right.
still, it's Winslet, Hathaway, Jolie, Streep,
Yeah.
and then Kristen Scott Thomas, and then Melissa Leo sneaks in.
Okay.
That's a good movie. She's
she
good in
gets
that
the
movie. Right?
Damien
Wind River?
Bashir slot.
No, Frozen River.
Oh,
Wind
yeah,
River,
yes.
I'm
no.
shaky on.
No,
that
Frozen
one.
River's a good movie. I mean, she's excellent.
Is Melissa Leo still running drugs across the Canadian border?
During the strike, yeah.
Well, I mean,
She's
yeah.
got to earn a living.
Yeah.
Jesus. Wow, she just does. Melissa, here's my pitch.
Yeah.
Melissa Leo in a Liam Neeson style action thriller.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you finally joined me on Equalizer Island. Been watching the Equalizer movies. Melissa Leo's throwing a heat.
She is. She's
and
good.
there's one action scene she has in 2 that you can tell she's excited that she's like, I finally get to do
more.
one of these.
You leave that wanting more.
Yeah,
and
but-
she's hard bitten.
But in that movie, she's wearing the medical glasses from The Big Short.
Yes, and she's
whole
also
time.
wearing the Consider fur coat.
That's the costume.
Yes.
fully,
And her
yep.
dodecahedron costume from Oblivion. She plays the dodecahedron in that movie.
She plays the thing from Out of This World. Remember?
Yes.
That show.
No.
Oh yeah.
Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Okay,
Yes.
so he old little.
He makes a connection with Daisy.
He started old and little.
Yeah,
He old little. He makes the connection with Daisy. He meets various people,
Well, the
such as
first guy-
OT.
Yes.
Right.
That's the guy who kind of opens up his world.
Who's the first person to take him out of the old people's home, basically, right? Like, so they go to a place.
He tests out what it is to have people regard him
right.
and look at him a bit askance, but also it's like, well, okay.
Right.
And it helps that OT is a little fellow, and right.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. And
But he's
also
comfortable in
is
his own
comfortable.
skin.
Right.
Yes, that's the
And
big,
does the thing with the kids where he startles them and it's cute.
Yeah.
Uh,
takes him to a brothel for the first time, where he, by pure happenstance,
sees Mr. Button.
well, Mr. Button sees him
Yes.
and says, "That might be my."
Mr. Button's like, I don't know
Weird
how
ass
many.
freak.
That might be my
old
old
man babies.
My
there
old
are
man,
in Norman's.
15-year-old,
Yeah.
going into that lady's room.
Yeah, I'm sharing a wall with some 85-year-old who fucks like a 15-year-old. That might be my son. I like
This movie is crazy.
This movie's insane.
It's fundamentally so crazy. That's why it's so funny that it is
Yeah.
this like lovely treacly movie.
Yeah,
That it's also a movie where this, my friends, was a poster. This was a poster. This,
Just the baby.
butt poster.
Yeah.
Baby butt poster.
A ring
Look
queen.
at
baby butt.
There you go.
Doesn't that make you want to see a movie?
Because the main poster was just
It's
Blanchett and
Blanchett.
Pitt looking hot as hell, just their two faces with like Vanity Fair portraits.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I feel like wasn't the hummingbird in a lot of the marketing?
It was.
I feel like I remember
Here's
that.
the thing
Yeah.
Fincher said that I thought was interesting. He was like, people were like, "Ugh, Eric Roth trying to do the feather thing again with the hummingbird, can't get
Mhm.
out of his own way. And he's like, the hummingbird is the exact opposite of the feather. The feather in Forrest Gump is this like magical creation, this thing that in theory has no mind of its own, that blows in the wind and touches everything.
Right.
The hummingbird has its own agency.
Yeah. Exactly.
It is not ending up here by chance.
It's on a mission. It's
Yeah.
making infinity with its wings, and
Right.
yeah.
But can we admit that Eric Roth should open a soup restaurant called Eric Broth?
Yes.
If he hasn't already.
David, when have I ever disagreed on that point? From the day I met you.
Hello, I'm David Sims. I
I'm
think
Griffin
Eric
Newman.
Roth should open a soup restaurant
I
called
agree.
Eric Broth.
Let's have a podcast.
Wait, no, can I get that clean one more time?
Eric Roth should open a soup restaurant called Eric Broth.
Great.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Eventually, okay, look.
Yeah.
He fuck. He
Oh,
meet
that's what I
Daisy.
want to say. That's what I want to say. Sorry. That the thing the sex worker says is like, you're a regular Dick Tracy.
Right.
That's her
yes.
line for
Is
how
that-
good he is at sex.
Sure.
Was he known to be a?
I don't really think of it. I think he had lady love.
Is that why Warren Beatty was drawn to the role?
Maybe
Yeah.
He is named Dick.
he does. Yeah.
It's in his
Maybe he
name?
was tracing his dick for her on
Yeah.
some
Yeah, he did do
um,
that.
wax paper.
Fincher in the commentary keeps saying like, this was the shot that my special effects supervisor almost quit over.
Right. Was
where
like, I'm
he'd be
gonna
like,
kill you.
he's got to
Right.
be in the bathtub. And they'd be like, can we put a collar on him? It's easier if there's some line between the
Right.
neck and the body. He's like, no, he doesn't wear a collar in the bathtub. And they get to the stuff. And he was like, I just kept saying to him, this is the job
shirt.
you signed up for. You have to do it, right?
They
And-
would go ahead.
He said the sex scene in the brothel is the one he folded on, where there was as written, a 4-page scene where she gave him a cloth and he washed his genitals and they had a long conversation.
Sure.
And the special effects guy was like, can he just be under the covers?
Right. Come on.
If they're both
That's
naked,
logical,
their bodies
right.
touching each other with covers on top, it's going to take 15 years.
Right.
They would. I forgot to say, but they
You
would.
don't see him during that scene.
They would call the people who play the body doubles
Yeah.
Smurfs because they wore a blue sock over
Oh,
their
fine.
head.
Yeah.
It is insane to imagine all of these scenes being shot with a little body double with a blue sock over his head while everyone else is just acting normal.
It's like the Dana Carvey finding out about 9/11 while in the Master of Disguise turtle suit.
He was in the turtle suit. We know that to be true.
Right? Like it's that kind of thing of like this serious movie and the surreality of actually being on set and these just like men covered in blue.
Yes. Look, I just have to tell you that he meet Daisy and then he become Tugboat.
Yes, that's where we're
seaman.
going.
He becomes a guy on a tugboat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I watched this movie in 2 chunks. It's 2 hours and 45
It's a
minutes
long-ass
long.
film. Yeah.
Very long.
And it's slow.
It's long, it's slow, it's methodical, and it has
deliberate.
digressions like Mr. Cake, like the long,
Yes.
all the things that happened before Daisy got hit by a car, things like that, where I'm sure there was a person being like, could we?
Oh, Fincher keeps talking about stuff they cut and saying we ultimately made the decision to cut the thing down to the bone. So I'm like, so there was a 5-hour version of this.
I would honestly, I would love to see that.
Yeah,
because because like the Daisy stuff, the lightning stuff, all that, like the Daisy the butterfly effect. Like I think it's all great.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't feel like embellishment in a way that it would in a lesser director's hands.
I agree.
Like had Gary Ross done that?
Yeah, I'd say Gary, get in and out in 90 minutes.
Come on. Yeah.
But Daisy Tugboat. Right. Yeah, I watched it. It's 2 hours. I watched an hour 25, hour 25, pretty much. Or what,
Okay.
I split it up. And I will say Benjamin Button Part 1, I do prefer to Benjamin Button Part 2.
Okay.
Benjamin Button Part, I cut it off right when the war ends, after when Jared Harris dies. And you're kind of like, this is a masterpiece. And then I think the latter half, which is a lot of Daisy, is very slow. And is sometimes a little watch commercial. Not that it's a bad thing, but Benjamin Button's adventures are sometimes. I do think he's about to turn around and offer me like a timeshare.
He'll have
when he's like brushing his teeth in the Himalayas or whatever.
Espresso.
100%.
Right, and it can only air in Japan.
Exactly.
The ending hits really hard for me, and I think it's good. But but Tugboat is so much of this.
Tugboat's
movie.
good.
I mean, Jared Harris.
It's just
one of my favorite guys. He has come up a number of times on the podcast. I'm always delighted by him. But I do think his run after this is really good, where it feels like people start giving him more meat, you know?
Yeah. I mean, because it's like, obviously, he's burdened and helped by being the son of a famous actor who kind of looks like his dad. Like, they resemble each other. And so it's like he's been getting work for years. Obviously, I Shot Andy Warhol, I feel like his biggest role in a way.
Yeah.
Before Mad Men, right? I'm like looking at his but like, Lost in Space. I mean, he's dubbed in that movie, but he's in Smoke.
Yes.
Peter Newman produced.
It Goes Down, my favorite movie when I was 12.
I can't believe what you saw in that movie.
I remind you I was 12.
I know. No, I'm joking, Griffin. You were like, come on. That movie's
I saw
clearly
too much in that movie.
Resident for you as a 12-year-old.
He's really good in that film.
Lots of other stuff. Mr. Deeds, apparently, he's in that.
Oh, he's really good in Mr. Deeds. He's Winona Ryder's boss.
I feel like he has a pretty big role in Sylvia, which is sort of a forgotten movie, but I remember him being good.
Doesn't he play the foreskin in Changeling?
He does. Yes, he does.
But he's someone where
they took me off.
At this point, still, I'm like, that's nice that someone hired Jared Harris and is letting him go off, right? And then it feels like the second he gets Mad Men, it's everyone like realizing like, why have we been sleeping on this guy? This guy should be getting everything. And a big, just like I think kind of turning point moment is, in the first Sherlock Holmes, Moriarty is in shadows, right?
Yes, he is.
And they're like, and the second one, we're actually going to put Moriarty in. And Guy Ritchie's claim was, I'm trying to get Brad Pitt to do it.
Oof.
And our backup is Daniel Day-Lewis.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah.
They were just shooting big.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get either guy to commit.
Brad Pitt would have been horrible.
Would have been terrible. And Daniel Day-Lewis never would have done it. And they couldn't get either guy to commit. They started filming the second movie without the role cast. And they were like, we're hoping we're going to get one of them on board. And then they just go like, fuck it, Jared Harris.
And it works.
And they just made the choice of being like, we don't need to cast a big star. Jared Harris will just kill this. He'll kill this. Give him
Which
a
is
character
often
poster.
a good choice to make.
Yeah, he's good in it.
Yeah.
He's always good.
And I think in this, it's fun in this to watch him on the more disheveled end of what he normally plays.
Yes.
Because I mean, I first really knew him from Mad Men, and he's has a tragic ending in that, but he's kind of more buttoned up and whatever. He's British and in a suit, and this is just like full tilt, just like messy, drunk all the time, and
Yeah.
it's he does it just as well.
He does it really well.
Yeah.
And it's also like you want some life in this movie.
The most
Yeah.
Ben character
Yeah.
in the movie, right?
Yeah, I
the
love this
tattooed
guy.
tugboat captain.
Yeah.
He looks so damn good.
He looks great.
That
looks
scene,
great.
that scene where him and Benjamin are watching videotapes on the porch. Oh,
He's got
God.
Hosley
so
coloring.
Playing Sega Genesis. I don't know how they got one in the 40s.
He does. He
Yeah.
has your complexion and your.
He does.
Yeah.
He
No,
does.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to hang with Jared.
Yeah.
You're always getting shot on boats, you know.
I mean, truly, in a different life, I would have been a tugboat captain.
Absolutely.
100%.
It's almost astounding that it isn't happening in this life.
Yeah.
Also, just kind of seems like the best job where it's like, what do? I'm on the seas. You know, I'm a captain.
Yeah.
Okay, what is your job? Well, they tie a rope to a big boat and I just kind of go forward. you
Might
know?
wife be the ocean.
David, a rope. I have a feeling it might be a huge fucking chain. Okay. Okay.
Benjamin does tugboating. Tugboats over to Russia. All that stuff. They get shot up by a U-boat.
Yeah.
He dies.
Which I didn't know that like tugboats could go all that way. Oh, are they doing more cargo at that point?
I
Yeah, I don't know.
don't know, man.
But I love the stuff with them sort of heading into this wintry, you know. It's always nighttime. I feel like in those is that Siberia?
It's not. It's sort of the other side. It's near like Finland. It's
Oh,
sort of
okay.
that bit.
Okay.
I also love that when Button is very young, everyone who looks at him is like, well, that's a freak of nature, right?
Right.
They look at him with like disgust and disdain. And then basically, starting from the brothel age on, they're like, this old man behaves a little strangely,
Right.
but he gets to basically be in the biological equivalent of like two kids stacked on top of each other in a trench coat, where he's like an undercover kid that adults speak to
Mhm.
as if he is wiser than them and has lived more than they have.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he just kind of hangs back and is like, as long as no one catches me.
And in his kind of laconic nature,
Yeah.
they respect him more. You know, like
There's a bit of a Chauncey Gardner where
Yeah.
they're like projecting onto his silence.
Exactly.
Like, this man is runs
He's
so
seen it
deep.
all.
which is what
right,
everyone in the movie is
yes.
doing. Like
Yes.
he must know something we don't, and
He
it's
must
like
be
no,
wise.
he's
Instead,
aging
he's
like the rest.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm 15 years old.
Right, right,
Yes.
exactly.
Like I love it. All
Like-
this, he's like so excited to be living a
I've had
life
sex
of like,
once.
high adventure.
Yeah.
I'm a real Dick Tracy.
Yeah.
Of course, this is, when he has his first love affair with Elizabeth Abbott, played by Tilda Swinton,
I
the wife of a spy.
yes, a performance I'm also a little astounded didn't get nominations.
She's so good.
I think it's probably too quiet a performance. Noelle Taraji obviously gets the nomination.
And she's so good in Burn After Reading this year as well, which
She's
they
also
give,
won an
BAFTA
O-
gives her a
Well,
nomination.
she won an Oscar the year after,
year
right?
before.
Is Clayton year after, year before?
Year before.
Year
Yeah.
before, so
Yeah.
she's
Year
just
before.
won an Oscar.
Yeah, let her have
Hey.
another round.
I love
She's-
Tilda.
She's so good in this.
She's plain as paper though, but yeah.
I know.
Other
I mean,
than that,
I barely fucking remember that she's in it.
Yeah, I mean Fincher like mocks that on the commentary. It's like
Good for him.
she's the most extraordinary looking person. How could we do this?
She's very striking.
He didn't say who it was, but he said there was an actress he really wanted, and he kept on saying that's who I think we should hire. And Pitt went, I don't know. And it was getting to the point where he was like, if we're not going to, what's your problem with this person? He's like, I don't know. I don't dislike that person, but I think we can do better. And he's like, okay, then I give you 5 minutes.
Sure.
Call me back in 5 minutes. If there's someone who's better than this person, who is very good, and we both agree, it should be so obvious that if you can't think of the name in 5 minutes, I'm offering.
we're going with Melissa Leo.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like Pitt called him 3 minutes later and said, tell us when. He was like, you're right. No, she's better.
I wonder who it was.
I know.
That's
Damn.
intriguing.
But
It's sort of an insult if it comes out though.
Which is why he clearly didn't
Yeah,
even
yeah.
allude to who it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
had they worked together before? They hadn't.
Well, that was, I think,
I don't.
Burn
think.
After Reading must have happened after
Right.
this
That's the thing.
chronologically.
When do those two?
But it comes out a couple months before.
Like, did he produce adaptation? She's in that. Can't remember when Plan B was rolling up its
Yeah.
sleeves. I mean, not that Brad Pitt's like, an active producer on some
No.
of these.
Although he has 2 Best Picture Oscars.
He won one for 12 Years a Slave, right? Did he win?
And he didn't get one for Moonlight. But those
no.
are both Plan B.
They are, but I think
Yeah.
no, he was left off for Moonlight, but I think 12 Years a Slave, he's in it.
Yeah.
I mean, great performance. But like, I guess because he's in it, I don't know, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Anyway, that whole segment is sort of my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah.
Is them in the hotel
Yes.
having tea, and then
Yeah. Well,
Fucking.
yeah. Do a little Dick Tracying.
It's also like this is where the age stuff gets interesting, where it's like, here's this woman who's maybe like given up on excitement in her life, right? And here she's having this kind of like final surprise surge whirlwind romance for a moment. And for him, this is his first love.
Yeah.
You know, like he's catching someone on the decline, and this is the first time. It's not his first time having sex.
And
but it's
she thinks
clearly
that they're simpatico in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
They
Right.
both,
Yeah.
you know, gone over some peak of life.
Right.
in their
And we've
own-
ended up in this wintry
Right.
town in the middle of nowhere. Like,
But he's like a college freshman.
Yep, it's
Yeah.
undeniable.
he has a crush on his professor, and that's
Yes.
her. Yeah.
Of course, she is a Diana Nyad type who wants to, you know, swim the channel.
Because there are so many Diana Nyad types. I'm sick of them.
Dime a dozen.
Jellyfish always after them, and so you know,
she's
that's
just-
her lifelong dream.
She's
right?
incredibly good, and it's that kind of performance where you're just like, it's just all stripped away. It's so simple what she's doing. It's just presence,
Yeah.
you know, and it's honest.
And it's a beautiful backstory. Like it's if they were going to pick one pertinent detail for her backstory, she almost swam the English Channel once 40 years ago, or however long it's supposed to be, 30 years ago.
Yeah, because it's this other running theme of the movies, which is like missed opportunities.
Yeah, and like all of the regret about that, and obviously that line about like that Jared Harris has about like you can hate how this happened, and
Right.
yeah.
Almost everyone he's meeting along the way is in some way burdened by the thing they fucked up or the thing that fucked them over from getting to do what they wanted to do at their peak. So you feel like, well, Benjamin Button is going to peak so late that he'll have the knowledge that all of us wish we had when we were in our body in that state, and he doesn't.
No,
You know?
no, exactly. He has regrets, same as anybody
It
else.
doesn't gain him anything.
No.
We can talk about that more in a second, but obviously, then he goes back to Nolans. Learns that Mahershala died. Meets Mr. Button for real for the first time.
Reveals who he is.
He reveals who he is, shows him a big button factory, and leaves it to him.
Yeah.
Button factory never comes up again.
No.
But I guess he's just kind of collecting button checks.
It is so funny.
Well, I
that-
don't know. The button industry probably was winding down after, right? In
Well,
the
but he kind of
60s.
says, like, look, World War One
Was-
a good time for
yeah,
buttons.
yeah, good time
People
for
need
buttons.
buttons.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just so funny that like you're like Benjamin Button, yeah, good character name. What's his deal? He's the heir to the button fortune. What do they do? Make buttons?
Yeah,
No.
they do.
They
buttons.
fucking
What
make
do you want from
buttons.
me? Okay, well, can the Paramount logo be a bunch of buttons? Yeah, I already did it for you. Here it is. Press play.
Warner Brothers too. Yeah, I did it already.
fucking all of it. Buttons everywhere. Like that movie starts with the buttons. You're like, damn, is this movie gonna be buttony? And then like for a while, you're like, I got no buttons. It's about an old guy. And then in an hour in, they're like, buttons.
Yeah, more butt than buttons for the first 20
There's
minutes.
some butt.
You got a little baby tushy.
Benjamin goes to see Daisy in New York, but she's a young woman. She's being bohemian.
She's being bohemian. She's
He's
self-involved.
standing there in the corner. He looks like fucking Orson Bean.
It's
Come
like,
on.
I was thinking about it like,
Someone watched
Equalizer
Equalizer 2 today.
Oh.
Did you know that
Yeah.
Orson Bean died in a car accident?
Yes.
You're like, oh, Orson Bean died. How old is he? 91. You're like, oh, that's a grand old age. Oh, he died in 2020. Did he die COVID? No, he died February 2020. Oh, okay. Well, but of old age, right? No, a car hit him.
right.
That
It's
guy
like,
was indestructible
it's
until
like-
someone mowed him down.
what is it, Desmond Llewellyn or whatever?
Desmond Llewellyn.
Terrible. I was thinking about in the great scene when he goes to see her in New York, and when I would
She's
do
going
plays in
potties.
college, and like a high school friend would come see it, and then after the play, I want to go to the cast party or hang out with my theater friends, and then here's this person from my old other life,
Yes.
and it was who I love, but like it was so hard to reconcile those things, and I think this movie, that's a pretty complicated dynamic for a big blockbuster prestige Oscar movie to like even bother with.
But this is a movie that I think, if Fincher is only interested in those dynamics. He goes for all the weird, hard to pin down little like moments and energy shifts and all that thing, rather than the huge things.
Right.
That,
Well, 'cause the
that
thing is about Fincher-
usually lead a movie like this to Oscar glory.
He's not like, I think he had obviously, and you guys are going to talking about this on the whole season, but like obviously reputation, cool, dark, all that stuff. But he's always a humanist.
Yes.
Like he is interested in human behavior. These people are not just sort of like objects that he wants to move around to get pretty pictures, or interesting
And
pictures.
also, by the way, this movie, he takes this on pretty shortly after his own father dies as well.
Right.
he said that Benjamin Button behavior is largely modeled after his father, that his father was this kind of passive listener, wallflower guy, and that his father had all this ambition to make films, which he tried to realize within his father's own life, and he didn't, you know? Like, this movie is him working through his shit as much as Eric Roth was in writing the script.
Yeah.
Mank.
Yeah, and so there's something gentle about it.
Mank.
Sank.
Then Kate Blanchett gets Orson Beaned. I'm sorry. It's incredibly insensitive joke. I'm really sorry. But she does get hit by a car. That sequence is, it's a little like Paul Thomas, a little Magnolia.
Yeah, it's a little Magnolia.
You know, where you're kind of like, okay, but like it's effective, I think. If only,
But in the same way
she'd
that a
not
lot
been
of
laid or...
this movie's Gumpisms are actually anti-Gumpisms, this is sort of the anti-Magnolia, which is like Ricky Jay is saying, like, surely these things
mean something. The connectedness is crucial, right?
Right, even if we can't
and
define
Benjamin
it.
Button is just like, man, I don't know, shit
Cruel,
happens. Roll the clock
meaningless
backwards.
world. Yeah.
If only
Everything
we
is
could roll the
causally
clock
related in
backwards.
some way, and
Right.
so whatever. What
Yes.
can you do?
But that doesn't make you important.
No.
It doesn't mean there was any vendetta being settled.
No.
And it's like, it means that Daisy will not be quote unquote important in terms of like, she will not enjoy celebrity,
Sure.
right? She will have to go back and marry a button freak.
But even beyond that, just her life will remain fundamentally forever unfulfilled. There is a part of her that never got to know.
But of course, that doesn't mean she has a bad life in any way. I mean, maybe Benji could have stuck around.
It's Sarah Silverman in Take This Waltz. Life has a gap. You don't go crazy trying to fill it.
Good movie.
And that's a pretty big gap for Daisy. But like,
remember when Sarah Polley won an Oscar that year? It was so great.
Yeah.
But
I was so happy.
Me too. I was
nice.
so happy.
Yeah.
I almost fucking had to play the fax machine for the 5th time. All Quiet on the Western Front was going to get on stage again. It was going to be so bad. When they would play that fucking fax machine score, just like, that's what it sounds like.
I didn't know what you meant by
play
the fax
that fucking movie has that score that sounds like a dial-up modem.
Sounds like AOL.
or like a dot matrix printer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they had to, it won again, play the fucking fax machine. It's so annoying. And then it was like, women talking. And then you had Frances McDormand's big head. Sort of. Sorry.
It's also, that was the only major award that A24 didn't win.
Yeah, Whale or Everything Everywhere.
A24 won picture, director, original screenplay, all four acting categories.
All 4 acting categories.
That's
wild.
When going back to Daisy, when you zoom out back to the hospital room, and you find out the daughter never knew about her dancing career. That
I've never seen these. Yeah,
destroyed me.
Yeah.
Because I have great parents,
fucking talking about.
but who are people that are very deeply private, and they're now getting later into their lives, and they just will sometimes
they'll let something slip.
They'll just throw a little.
When I was a
fact
cowboy,
out, and you're like, what the fuck?
Dude.
How had you never shared this with me before?
100%,
This shapes my view of you in such a, I see you in a completely different way now.
Overshare with your children is what we're saying.
Yes.
But I think that in this movie's psychology, and maybe it's a bit more grandiose for Daisy than it is for your parents, Ben, is that it hurts to talk about a little bit. It's sad to talk about.
No, but I also it gave me perspective too, because I do understand this is one of the most tragic parts of her life.
On my
she doesn't
read.
want to talk about it.
Yes.
She can't think about it.
No.
It's too hurtful.
No, and all I feel like what I was talking about, how memory becomes myth, and then you tell the stories to other people, it becomes abstracted even more, right?
Yeah.
When people ask you in small talk, so what are your parents like? What do they do? You give this bullet point version of your parents' life consolidated into 6 sentences. Sure. And you've more greatly condensed what they've condensed in telling to you, leaving out these large swaths. And then when you find out one of these things, which has happened with my parents as well over the last couple of years, my grandmother, who's much, much older, and I've been trying to pull stuff out of while she's still here, you hear these anecdotes and you go my entire notion of you is completely disrupted.
Yeah.
I don't know how to slot that in between these 2 points in the 6 sentences I used to have about you.
The story that I have created for you is now you've distorted that.
You created a story in your life, and then I created it even further, and I don't know how to fit it in here. It's missing episodes, a season of a show that I never got to see and whatever. And there's also that moment Julia Ormond plays so well where it's because they only cut back to them like 5 times maybe.
You know, it's
But
pretty
she's
consistent.
reading the book and she looks up and she says like, you must have met Dad pretty shortly after.
And
this,
she's
Right.
doing the
right?"
math. Yeah.
And she's doing the math of just like, at this point, there's a 50-50 shot that this button dude is my biological father.
Yeah.
I know when I was born. I know when Dad would have to
And where's the
enter.
button money?
Right, all of
Yeah.
this. It's getting like uncomfortably close. And it's not a thing she can yell at her mother about. Her mother can barely breathe.
She chastises her mother, though. She's like, I'm finding out this way. This is, she
Yeah.
does have that moment.
But there's only a degree to which
Yeah, she can't relitigate.
What will
She
it
can't
accomplish?
open it all up. Yeah.
Speaking of Ormond, I also love it's one line that they never revisit again,
Mm.
where she's saying, "Well, I haven't made much of my life." Like Julia Ormond saying
Yes.
that, and it's like, see, everyone feels like it's
Everyone.
just,
And
it's
crazy.
not
Her
just
character's an astronaut.
right. Yeah, she lived in Wyoming with Brad Pitt for a while.
Yeah.
No,
Yes,
no,
no.
That's very true.
yes.
That that she's afflicted with Benjamin Button disease, which we all are, which is,
That's the
could I
takeaway.
have done more?
We actually all have it.
Yeah, look, Fincher is someone who's had a great career, right? And was something of like a wonderkind and everything.
Right, but could he have called himself the Finch Man earlier? Could he have had all his movies called
It's
Finch Man
embarrassing
Joints?
that it took
Right.
the Doughboys to come up with the name he should have been assigning himself from the very beginning. No, but also like certainly a director who had a serious case of the attaches over years, and projects that either fall apart, that he drops out of, that he gets fired off of, all these things. You're just like, he must be overridden with a sense of like, if I had made this movie at this point, does my career go this way instead of that way?
He and Del Toro should go get drinks and talk about exactly that, and just try to work through some
The
things.
attaches
Yeah.
is our new phrase that JJ coined.
It's good.
It's
It's
well,
good.
it's good, and it describes a very particular kind of director.
Kind of. It has. You have to be a pretty big director
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
means lots of people want you to
But
make
see,
their movie.
And those two guys even are like, but let's not invite Romantic.
Well, no, but he's
got
he's
chronic
also
attaches.
Yeah, he's
And
yeah.
he,
yeah, he's
unfortunately,
addicted.
he never
Right.
gets the make.
He's too much of a
Right.
bummer.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
He's too much
exactly.
of a bummer. Like
Yeah.
he just got hit by a car in Paris. Like we're
Right.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, what if it said like
He
directed?
got Orson Bean.
How about this?
Yeah.
This. How about this? Directed by David Fincher.
Okay.
Fade to black. Next
Okay.
credit comes up. From the desk of the Finch Man. That'd be his writing.
Yeah, that
credit.
should be his
There you go.
version
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Spike Lee joint.
There you go. But it's said in I know they have a voice for it, but I think it should be said in your Verhoeven voice.
Yeah.
From the desk of the Finch Man.
How about
Yeah.
sprung from the twisted bean of the Finch Man?
There you go.
Part 2 of this film
Yeah.
is the settling part. Benjamin returns to New Orleans, so does Daisy. They reunite. Queenie dies. They
Yes.
fall in love. They
Let me just
have a
say-
kid. She opens a ballet studio.
Well, you're breezing through a lot of stuff.
I'm not. The movie starts to breeze.
No, it does. What I want to say is when he comes to visit her in the hospital, I think that's the first
Sure.
time she says, "You're perfect," right? Which she
Yes.
basically says variations of that 3 times.
Right.
Like every time she sees him again, he looks even better and she's more,
Out of mostly envy.
yes.
Not there is attraction there,
Exactly.
but it's mostly the kind of thing of like
He
me,
could stand to be like, "Hey, I was fucking old man for
Right.
4
Like,
years.
come on.
Give me a
I had a,
Right,
break."
bad, a
exactly.
pretty bad run of
Let me
things
enjoy
for a
this.
while there.
But
I was
it-
7, but I looked a
What
lot
if he
older.
still had the
Yeah.
voice?
I
He looked
that would-
perfect.
really good.
I wish.
But her career is in some part about vanity. It's about
Yes,
physical
100%,
ability as
and
well.
she can't be a
And
star
every time
anymore.
she's like, ugh, like my sister has this obsession. She's 1.5 years older than me. That I don't have any wrinkles and she does. I don't really think she has wrinkles, but she'll always like. I'll be like saying something pertinent about my life, and she'll just
Yeah.
kind of be like, "Oh, you don't have any wrinkles."
Well, I like.
It's that kind of thing.
I always.
brag.
I disagree with her, but
I always feel terrible about how I look, and if you show me a picture of me from 3 years earlier,
Yeah.
I'm
Dude,
like,
this
Jesus fucking
This
Christ.
is the most
I
common
had it.
syndrome.
It's always.
Everyone
yeah.
has this,
Right.
and it's so true. Like where I'm like looking at a young picture of myself, and I'm like, "Damn, I look great," and also I'm like, "I know I didn't like this.
I was miserable.
I know I thought this looked bad. I know
100%.
I thought I didn't
and
have
it's the myth of the Button thing of you're like,
the juice.
right.
I
You're
didn't
like-
have the juice.
Does
Right.
Button, like, is he in the right mindset at the moment he's in his peak condition where he would know how to use it for whatever that means, right? Where he
No.
would appreciate it.
yeah.
And you're like, no, he doesn't. And she looks at him with spite. every time. There's this brief moment in the middle where they sort of actually like are able to be with each other, and it's so funny to think about. They've known each other at that point for 20 years.
More longer. 30 years.
You're like, this is the first time they're actually really spending extended time together.
Yeah.
They don't actually know each other that well. Yeah.
It's like a day here, a day there, spread out by years.
I kind of love when they do finally sleep together, because I feel like the way it goes down is like, it's very much like, do you want to sleep together?
Let's
let's do
go.
it.
Yes,
It's like very like,
immediately.
this has been building up for a really long time.
Yes.
It's not like, let's light a candle.
No,
let's
like,
she's like, make love to me. He's like,
Also, we gotta.
He's like, ripping his shirt off as he's answering.
Velcro pants.
And there's a timeline on it. Yeah.
they land on her. She doesn't mind.
Right, but there's like, the timeline is more loud for them, because it's like we've been in opposite directions. This one moment we're right here at the center,
and then she's going to be possibly too vain to want to sleep with like beautiful 22-year-old-esque Benjamin, like
Johnny Suede Benjamin, we call him.
Right, there you go.
Johnny Suede
Cool
Benjamin,
world, perhaps.
Cool world Benjamin.
Yeah.
I think another part of that too is that, like you said earlier in this episode, like we all know dying is inevitable. We're going towards that. We know what happens. It's scary.
For you guys, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You have no wrinkles.
No, I'm fine.
But like, if you're lucky enough to have the privilege to grow old, you look forward to all these things that are kind of scary and depressing. And that's if you get to live a long life, right? Benjamin Button is this one guy where everyone's like, I actually don't know what happens the last 20 years of his life. Right. I think everyone around him's wondering, including himself, do I turn to a giant baby? Do I stay this way forever? Do I like turn into dust? Like what happens? So like she's overcome with the like, my life is on the decline. I'm past my physical peak. I'll never get to fulfill my greatest passion, all this sort of stuff. And this is what he's been looking forward to his entire life, is basically him and Daisy being equals.
Yeah.
Being able to be together, which only satisfies him so briefly before he starts to go, but what else can I do in my life?
And also, what can't I do? Because like, obviously the idea is I would settle down with a child.
Right.
And like, but he's in a way also too prideful to let that happen, or too worried, like, I think about my dad, like it's a different sort of story, but like choosing to have children, let's say 10 years later than most people do, like knowing like, okay, when my son's 40, I'll be 89, like, but like I think this movie, you're like, he should have stayed at least for some time.
Absolutely. No, and Fincher has said,
the most selfish, it doesn't make any
sense.
Because
they would have figured it out. But
100%. He also doesn't turn into like a teenager who doesn't know anything for years.
Fincher has said that this was, unsurprisingly, his single biggest fight with Paramount. And it was like a point he refused to move on, which is he doesn't say anything.
Right.
He just like leaves in the middle of the night.
It
like
really
a
upset both of us when we were watching it. Because now it feels so crazy.
And he's just like, I think that's the character we've built. Like this guy is so bottled in his emotions, and he is just operating out of fear. And it's just like, that's kind of it. And it is a point of cruelty that is hard for the audience to get past, especially when it's kind of inexplicable, where he can't even verbalize it to himself.
Right. It does make it hits flatter for me when he's like brushing his teeth on the mountain or whatever. And I'm like, oh, great. You had all your experiences, buddy. Like,
I mean, I think the other thing about like Brad Pitt getting nominated, which is interesting, I get why he did, but like,
he's really good.
He's good in it, but also like you finish this movie being like, wow, Benjamin has expressed himself so much. And it's like, no, only in voiceover.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot of narration.
It's all in his, and I mean, I love there's that moment where he's torn a bunch of pages out of the book.
Yeah.
And she's like, don't
No
know
idea.
what this is. And it's like, we'll never fucking know because we're only reading his version of his tale.
Lollapalooza.
Too curious. Too curious. Like this tale could be curious.
Well,
It was
he
the
did.
bi-curious.
Oh, hello.
He spent some time in New Mexico working on some kind of science project with some people.
Yeah.
Yep.
But also, like, I comparing it to Meet Joe Black, like, it's kind of a similar performance. Like, in the present tense of the movie, like, kind of blank, curious, but cold. Like,
Joe Black, it's Orson Bean.
Yeah.
Well, that's not Joe Black. Okay.
Yeah,
that's the other guy.
That's the body Joe Black will
That scene
inhabit.
is absolutely hysterical still.
It is.
I watched it last night and I was like,
maybe it can never be deleted.
No.
But it is maybe the one scene where if Martin Brest was like, I I needed to digitally alter it.
I need
Yes,
to do a
it's
special
insane.
edition.
I don't know
for
what
it.
we were
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
I would be like, I fully understand, my friend.
Let's also admit that Joe Black, by his very profession, is basically an Orson Beaner.
He
Go
can
ahead.
choose to Orson Bean you if
He
he's so-
exists to
yeah.
Orson Bean.
Yeah.
He Orson Beans us out of this plane and onto the next one.
So we're just now using Orson Bean to mean leaving this mortal coil.
Mhm.
R.I.P. to Breitbart contributor Orson Bean.
Was-
Did you know he became a Breitbart
No,
contributor late in life?
No.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
He's so good in Equalizer too.
He's so good in fucking being John Malkovich.
Yeah.
He was on Carson 200 times. Did you know that?
No.
He was like one of those guys. Like it was just like now Orson Bean.
I just
You know,
remember
and he got
funny.
hit by a car on Carson?
He,
It's horrible.
what are we doing?
the Criterion commentary for being John Malkovich. I think it might be Jones and Gondry together.
Gondry. I mean Kaufman.
No, I think it might be Gondry. It's
Why is
Jones
Gondry
and another filmmaker.
Okay, fine, sure. And Gondry's just like this part's crazy.
No, one point they start talking about Orson Bean. They were like,
Sure.
he was such a great actor. It really
Like
I
they're
was-
talking like he's dead.
Yeah, and then someone Googles him in the middle of it, and they were like, he's still
Still
alive.
kicking.
And Spike Jones is like, what?
He is so fucking funny in being John Malkovich. That like where he's just being normal and introducing the job, and then he talks about like how this woman's like breasts are divine ambrosia,
Yes.
and she's so funny.
Yes.
He's-
It's like my favorite bit.
he
and
also does all the exposition in that movie
Yes.
of,
Yes.
of how it works.
No, he's great.
Yeah.
He's great. I just like that Spike Jones was sort of talking with
Yes.
the knowledge of like, and I went to
poor
visit him in his
Orson.
dying
Right.
days.
Yeah, right.
And then he's
like, nah,
basically
man.
just like, I assumed we shot this movie 20 years ago. That guy's still
No,
kicking.
he's apparently lining up a Denzel sequel.
As long as he never tries to cross the road, he'll live forever.
I apologize to the friends and family of Orson Bean.
Yeah. Bean never
So
done that.
yes, he abandons his family. He Johnny Swades himself. He
Yep.
Cool Worlds himself. He Thelma and Louise's all the way right back to the ballet studio.
California.
Mostly in shadow. The
Yes.
de-aging does work, but it's all done very carefully where it's like we do not see too much of
No,
him. Yes. To keep it from feeling waxy.
Yeah. Interesting thing Fincher said is because the de-aging on Kate Blanchett is so good.
Yeah.
And for this being pretty early in that technology when it often looks so bad, I was like, why is this
She's
better?
got a smooth face.
Smooth face. He said
She and
even
I have that in common.
in some of the younger scenes that he actually had to age her up.
Interesting.
But no, the other thing he said is her face is so sculpted that all we really did was fill in her cheekbones.
Right.
Yeah.
That we weren't removing wrinkles.
You
all
gave her
we
kinda
did
like
was we
baby
gave her
fat.
baby fat.
Yes. Yeah,
we
yeah,
added
yeah.
cheeks and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because she obviously has become more pinched as all people do. And then Benny turns into they do have sex once when he's like Thelma and Louise.
Yeah. And she
But-
seems really insecure during it.
It's a really good scene. Like that shot of her getting
Yeah.
dressed
Yes.
Mhm.
is such a clever thing for Fincher to include.
Yes.
Like that like vulnerability she has. And obviously he's, quote unquote perfect or whatever.
Yeah.
And like how she feels perceived by him. Even though
Yeah.
she,
No, it's
Can't
kind
articulate
of
it.
there's a little bit of an interesting like baton pass.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Where-
at this point, he's not a character, really.
No, and you're really staying with Blanchett more in the present of the journals, even though
Yeah.
yeah.
And
No, it
then-
really becomes her movie for the last 20 minutes.
Yes.
Maybe more.
Yeah. It's, then he's a teenager and he's right. He's basically a demented old man in the body of a child
It's,
for the rest of the movie. It's
upsetting.
It's upsetting. It's really upsetting.
Because you do, I mean, it's such a long movie and you do get caught
You
up.
are kind of like, okay.
No, but
right,
you get
right.
caught up in the same kind of delusion that the people who know him are, which is like he's eternal.
Something magical.
Somehow he's
happen.
eternal,
Yes.
Right.
And yet it's like, no, we found him sleeping under a fucking bridge or whatever it is, like
Right.
Yeah.
because he doesn't have anyone. He's left his life,
Yeah.
Which is also like how a lot of old people end up,
Sure. Yes. If they don't have someone to, help them.
Look, I mean, I think we've all made I'm glad we are all on the same page vouching for this movie's.
I cried.
Right to respect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still think inarguably it's in the bottom half of his filmography.
I have it. Yeah. But he has an
does.
exceptional filmography.
He does. I think this movie gets a bad rap, but I also could never argue it's one of his 5 best films.
No, I have it a little below the.
It's
right.
interesting.
I
And
think
it's more worthy
it's
than it
successful.
has a reputation for being.
Yes. And I think it's of a piece with his filmography rather than people seeing it as like, that's the one weird time he tried to make someone else's kind of movie.
Which
It's
I
as
do think is
sentimental
right.
as
The
he's going to
unfair.
get. Yeah.
It's as sentimental as he's going to get, but I think Griffin is right that it's got way more of Fincher in him than you might think, or
Right.
that he gets credit.
And once
for.
again, as sentimental as he can possibly get, in the movie where the guy abandons his daughter without even leaving a note.
Yeah, but I don't like that part.
Yeah, that's my point, though. That's
Don't
in line
like
with
it.
Fincher's worldview.
I guess it is.
And
Yeah.
he gets to do a pretty, I think, effective and creepy World War II scene.
Yeah, it's
You
a
know?
good scene. No, that scene's really
Little
good.
action for people who've, been dragged to.
Right.
Yeah.
It turns
Theater.
out that was U571. And it's McConaughey on the
Right.
other end.
Right.
And then
Jack Noseworthy's somewhere in there.
you finish the book at the moment as your mother breathes her
Expires.
last breaths as they
Yes.
evacuate
Mhm.
the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
and as you see the clock get drowned. It's just
yes.
like all of this just fucking goes away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And then the clock metaphor. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't perfectly line up with Benjamin's situation, but it's evocative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
okay.
then you get why it's during Katrina.
Yes.
Good movie.
I think it's a good movie.
I do too. If you don't like it, I don't care.
Working well.
It got 13 Oscar
Toot
nominations.
toot, here comes the Orson mobile.
It wins visual effects, I assume.
Correct.
It wins art direction.
No. Yes, art direction. Yes.
And the third one would have been costumes?
Makeup.
Makeup. Oh, of course.
It lost costumes. I'm not sure to who. Let's find out.
2008. There's an obvious
It
one.
lost costumes, of course, to the Duchess.
Yeah.
The
Just a couple of
Duchess.
final thoughts here.
Please.
Did I mention I was struck by lightning 7 times? Did that come up on this?
Who's that guy?
You
That
should have
guy
meted
fucks
it out,
levels.
maybe
I'm looking him up.
one reveal every 10 minutes of the podcast.
Fincher said in the
Oh, yeah.
commentary, director notorious for doing multiple takes in a movie like this that's so technically precise with needing to line up head replacement, whatever. I think that was even more of an extreme thing.
Yeah.
And he would do so many takes of this guy, and they'd be like, I think we have it. Don't you want to move on? He's like, I just really like watching him act.
Oh, that's
He was like, I do the takes because I thought this guy was so good on camera.
He is.
Roy,
I mean,
Roy Sullivan is the actor.
Yeah.
A lot of especially
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Roy Sullivan is the real person that he's based on who was struck by lightning 7 times.
Oh, wow.
The character is called Mr. Dawes
Mm-hmm.
in the movie. He's very recognizable to me. I just want to find
Yeah.
who plays Mr. Dawes. This is where fucking AI should be doing this.
AI should be doing this for
I'm
you?
joking. No, not Dick Van Dyke. Wait a second.
What?
Because that's the character in Mary Poppins as well,
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Dawes. Ted Manson. Okay. I didn't you recognize that guy?
He's the grandfather in Talladega Nights.
That's what I know him from.
Great.
He's
There you
so
go.
funny in
Solved.
that.
He's also, of course,
I'm
this
gonna come at you like a spider monkey.
Sad Joe in Elizabethtown.
Sure.
Oh God. I'm out. I'm
Well,
out.
technically, every character in that movie has sad before their name, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He feels like one of those guys who just was biding his time till he turned 75. And then
Correct.
suddenly Hollywood was like, we need an old guy, and it's you.
A classic Patrick Crenshaw.
Right.
Yeah.
That's who he is, though. He's fucking Talladega Nights. He's
Yes.
Chip.
He's Chip.
Did you know that June Squibb and Mary Ellen Burke are both in Meet Joe Black? Is it Mary Beth Burke who plays the mom in whatever? I'm rambling, but
Yeah.
But June Squibb is in Meet Joe Black and has
Yeah.
many lines.
That's well. Yeah,
Yeah.
she was around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who you mean, though. It's not Mary Burke. We can think about it. Yes, this film was nominated for various
She plays
Oscars.
the guy's mom in Sideways.
What? So right, no, you're right. June Squibb is not the mom in
No,
Sideways.
no,
June
no.
Squibb
She's
There's
the
a, there's
wife
a
and
second
the
actress
wife and about
Schmidt,
Schmidt,
who did
right.
very well
And
in
of
their
course
older
she's-
age. Yeah.
She's in Mary Louise Burke.
Mary Louise
Mary
Burke. There we
Louise
go.
Burke.
She's great.
Um,
Anyway.
Okay, quick. I just have
Oh,
a couple
yeah.
more.
Please.
thoughts
Okay,
to
okay,
share.
go
Yeah,
ahead. I'm sorry.
So we were talking about the logic,
Mhm.
right? Of how this could work.
Sure.
Could he come out as a ghost initially, then
Go on.
turn into
Not sure that he
Flash?
should go on.
Some
he
sort
should-
of funky phantom.
You should be born as a funky fan.
That's what I'm saying.
And then, it's like Dr. Manhattan, you see a skeleton walking around. and you
Yes,
see
that's
some
what I'm
muscles.
saying. That's what I'm saying. He could have been a little bone.
Oh,
man.
he should recompose.
You just
Right.
want a bone man. This is just a roundabout way
Wait a second.
of you getting a bone man on
Yes, it
screen.
is. And then he starts getting hair and his
Yeah.
nails and flesh.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a
muscle.
good pitch. It's a good pitch.
Because then he could also come out as a full grown thing if he was a ghost.
I know what you mean, but when you keep on phrasing it as come out, I keep thinking you're saying like announce his identity as
Mom, Dad, I'm a little bone man.
little bone man.
This film.
Do you have further notes, Ben?
Yeah, just last thing is, hey, listeners, look both ways when you're crossing the street.
Don't twirl.
Don't get beaned.
Don't get beamed.
Don't be beaned.
Don't get blacked.
Well, don't say that.
Well, sorry, you can cut it out.
Well,
I meant
keep it
Joe
in.
Black. The weird thing about this movie is, yes, it didn't win Best Picture,
Mm.
even though it was a big movie, right? That's not surprising. Who did it like lose to? The Slumdog buzzsaw.
Yes.
That's the weirdest thing about Slumdog is you're like the most unexpected where it's like, well, what were you supposed to do? Slumdog had it.
I think this would have won had Slumdog not.
Yeah, possibly because
based
it's
on
a
the number of
very weak
nominations.
year. Obviously, it's the year that they don't nominate The Dark Knight and Wally,
Right.
and like
That's the
they're
big thing.
seen as missing out on
And Gran Torino
on-
to a lesser extent.
right,
Yeah.
is missing out on these popular films. And
Right.
yes, like I do think of Button, Frost Nixon, The Reader, and Milk.
Right.
Button probably is the front runner. I think Milk is maybe the better liked movie and actually wins two big
but
Oscars.
somehow never had that heat behind it, even though I think it's
because it's a biopic.
but it's
I guess.
it's
And
like
it was gay.
Yeah,
what?
it's so good.
Did you know that? Did you not pick that
Is
up?
he gay?
Milk?
I thought he was made of milk. Man.
No, Josh Brolin's gay in it.
Yes, no, because he's gay. He's definitely,
Yeah.
but still, he won actor and screenplay.
Yeah.
Milk.
Yeah. A little bit of
Um,
controversy around the screenplay win, but we can talk about that off air.
Mhm.
He's still working today.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Uh,
I'm seeing here he wrote a movie this year.
He wrote Rustin, right? Rustin.
I don't
Lance
know.
Black?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm just saying, imagine if as a director you went from August Wilson to Dustin Lance Black as your screenwriter, how that would go.
Mhm.
But it is, it's just funny. It's like, well, what were you supposed to do though? The Slumdog Millionaire train.
Yeah, there's no fighting
chug all the way through.
Right.
Like Fincher sitting there losing, just being
and that was apparent at what point in this? I know you guys probably talked about this during
in like the Oscar race. I
Yeah.
don't even know.
I think from
like how far did they see it coming? You know?
my perception of memory is that like from the moment Slumdog plays at TIFF,
and
That's
it is the
audience
front runner.
Right.
Button screens late, doesn't come out until Christmas.
Right.
And I think from the time
Button's like the one waiting to be the last
was-
movie the
yes,
critics
correct.
see.
the last
you know?
hope to knock it off.
they
this.
were like,
yes.
well, if this thing's undeniable, it pushes Slumdog off the mantle.
And I think the
Yeah.
reaction was very well done,
Yes.
but a lot of critics were like, this is a sap fest. You know,
Yeah.
it got dismissed by a lot of critics. And, then it gets put into the, it'll win some technical Oscars.
What I find so fascinating is it's a sap fest, and also it didn't make me cry enough. Like I
Yeah.
feel like it was getting hit from both sides.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. Right. But Fincher the Iceman is
Right.
still behind the camera.
I'm going to feel, and he won't give me the release.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
because it's a little too in its head,
Yeah.
in a good, interesting way.
But it's a big hit.
It is a big hit. It made 127 domestic, 329 worldwide. It's a good hit.
It's a good hit.
But it's not a,
much bigger overseas.
bigger overseas. But like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not quite the phenomenon you maybe
No.
want it to be.
No,
Like,
it's
not
like-
making Slumdog numbers.
It's like
No.
Meet Joe Black. Like
Yeah.
it like made. I probably
it was an expensive
broke
movie.
even maybe, but
Right.
like
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
this did much better than Mitra Black
Yeah.
domestically.
Yeah.
But yes, no, it's the thing is like Forrest Gump is that weird on paper. This does not seem commercial, and yet it was a fucking Triple Crown winner.
Right.
And they would just keep on going. Like every once in a while,
We
you have
can
to
do that
pick
again.
an
We'll-
odd piece of material, stack it full of top tier talent,
Mhm.
and maybe this thing just hits the zeitgeist just right.
there better be a Southern accent.
Yes.
It-
You know.
But it made less domestically than the film it opened against on Christmas 2008.
You were starting to talk about this right before we started recording. About now, basically Christmas, you get a classic standard blockbuster, maybe one kids movie counter programming.
And
It-
one Oscar-y movie, probably.
It used to be like 6 big studio
Six
films,
fucking things
just
that have nothing
fed
to do
into
with
the
each other.
bloodbath,
Right.
and often 5 of them will succeed. Like
Yeah.
the biggest.
It's a
weekend.
fertile time.
Yes.
Benjamin Button's opening number 3 out of 4 new openings on the top 5.
The one that I believe won the bloodbath, surprisingly,
Mm-hmm.
embarrassingly for Brad, was Jennifer Aniston's Marley. and Me.
Correct. Marley had the killer instinct.
Marley.
Also about death. Also about death.
Also about
Also
death.
about death.
Marley and Me makes 36 domestic
It's
and
no ordinary dog.
yeah.
We made this dog.
Makes 36 opening weekend, 143 domestic.
Yeah.
It doesn't do as well worldwide.
Sure.
Worldwide, people didn't care about Marley.
But America loved Marley.
America liked Marley.
Loved Marley.
Loved Marley. We love Marley.
I recommend this dog.
So Marley and Me is number 1.
I'm 7, but I look a lot older. He's 7 and dog years.
He could be buttoned. He could have
Oh.
buttoned.
He could have.
Owen?
Yeah.
Hey,
Wow.
you want a button?
Number 2 at the box office is not The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. No, it is a family comedy with a big star.
Is it a opener or is it a
Opening this week to 27 mil, on its way to a domestic take of 110.
I feel like this is the one that people thought was going to be number 1, and Marley and Me was
Maybe.
kind of the surprise.
I mean, this movie stars a big comedy star,
In 2008.
but I would say it's regarded as one of his lesser.
It's not Gulliver's Travels, is it?
New.
But am I kind of in the right ballpark?
Sort of.
It's not a Farrell.
New.
It's not a Stiller.
New.
It's a big comedy star. It's not a Carey? Or
No.
is it? No.
Mm-mm.
Fuck. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Who are the other comedy A-listers of
Who's the
this
other one?
moment? And Owen Wilson's already there. It's not a Vince Vaughn?
No, who's bigger than him? Big comedy star of the 2000s.
Sandler.
Adam Sandler.
Bedtime Stories.
Bedtime
Which
stories.
is not good.
His one dalliance with Disney, I feel.
And this
It's his only Disney film.
Benjamin Button also sort of a bedtime story.
That's true.
It is.
Parallels everywhere.
Never seen Bedtime Stories.
Not good.
Is that with Kerry
Never
Russell
seen?
or is that
No,
Click?
no. Kerry
That's
Russell.
Kerry Russell.
Oh, it is.
Click is who?
Teresa Palmer. Guy Pearce is the villain. Click is
Katie
Beckinsale.
Holmes? Beckinsale.
Beckinsale.
Yeah. I
Kate-
think I've now seen all the Sandler vehicles. I think I finally filled in all my final gaps, but this one I saw in theaters.
And didn't like.
No, not good.
Number 3, Benjamin Button. Number 4 is another new opener. I think a film that one time had Oscar hopes,
Mm-hmm.
but didn't really pan out. Kind of a flop by the standards of this star.
Mm-hmm.
And director who's had some stories in the news.
Recently?
The last few years.
It's not a Gibson.
No. Worse.
Stories worse. Is it Valkyrie?
It's like James Woods and
Bryan Singer's Valkyrie.
Yeah.
Benjamin Button also killed some Nazis.
He did.
But weirdly-
And, whereas Tom Cruise tried his fucking best, but
Yeah.
blew it.
Weirdly, the movie that then sets up Tom Cruise's redemption arc by finally teaming him up with Macquarie, and then they build a relationship that
That is true.
rebuilt him.
That is one of
Yeah.
those movies where I was so hyped at the time because I
Yeah.
was sort of like Superman Returns underrated.
Yeah.
Like Tom Cruise doing a prestige movie. Love that. And
Yeah.
it is a weirdly flat movie.
It is. There's the one thing in that movie I think is really impressive that I think about a lot,
That they wanted to kill Hitler.
which I think is a good.
No,
I think
what?
that actually stands up well.
What's
in court.
impressive? I mean, I was also just pumped because it's like Bill Nye, Kenneth
course.
Branagh, Tom
Murderers
Wilkinson.
Row.
They've got all these.
But they're
guys.
doing BYOA.
Yeah, they are.
Bring your own accent.
They're also doing like NAR, no acting,
acting required.
Yes.
I
I just sit here in this uniform and read the lines. It'll be fine, right?
Yes. I was listening to the Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning spoiler special
I need to
podcast
listen.
that Empire put out, which are really good. And are a quick 18 hours
Yeah,
across
that's
6
why I haven't
episodes.
gotten to it yet. Yeah.
But he was saying he gave Cruise full credit for this, that in his script, it was like they make the assassination attempt, the bomb goes off, Hitler survives it, you immediately cut to Hitler and is like, they tried to assassinate me. And Cruise said, don't cut back to Hitler.
Right.
And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, live in it where they think they've succeeded.
Right.
And stay in the tension of that for 30 or 40 minutes. And Macquarie's like, that won't work. People know Hitler didn't die. And Cruise was like, the audience won't care. And I remember sitting there in the theater in the 30 minutes where they're proceeding as if they've succeeded and feeling genuine tension, even though I knew where it was going and how it ended. And it is this kind of like power of movies thing
Yeah.
where there's this chunk of the movie where you're just like,
Gripped.
Yeah.
Not
anyway,
a good
not
movie,
a good
though.
movie. No.
Number
That
5.
opened on Christmas?
I don't know what anyone was.
What on
thinking.
earth?
It's an insane.
That was only
decision.
15 years ago, and that's like talking about a different planet.
It's just literally like people in theaters, like Tom Cruise in an American accent in a Nazi uniform saying like Hitler is seen as last sunrise. And people are like, we could see that at Christmas.
Not only that,
Hey, babe, do you want to see Bedtime Stories or the movie where Tom Cruise plays a Nazi?
not only that,
Both are opening on Christmas.
with an eye patch.
Yeah, with an eye patch.
Not only
There's
that,
an
but
eye
that's
patch on
Cruise
it.
being like, I need to convince audiences that I'm normal. People think I'm crazy.
No,
now.
let's actually. You know what? Let's compromise. We'll see the movie where Brad Pitt plays Sling Blade as a wizened old baby.
That's the truth. The family had to agree on Button is the most normal. It's like I don't want to.
That's
watch
what my
dog
family would have
die.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to. I saw this film with my girlfriend at the time
Humble brag.
and her parents,
Yeah.
and it was truly a like got to do something on Christmas,
Yeah.
you know, at the AMC Lincoln Square. I remember very clearly. Number 5 at the box office is a Jim Carrey comedy, falling to number 5 from number 1 the week before.
It is Yes Man,
It's
right?
Yes Man.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey's basically last swing at just like doing a Jim Carrey comedy.
Mr. Popper's Penguins, but then
I think that doesn't count,
then yes, you're right.
right? Because that's a kid's movie.
Yeah.
This is just him being like, it's a high concept movie.
Let's
with
just
me.
do Liar Liar, but
Yeah,
different. Yeah.
This was it's been litigated many times what caused the death of the studio comedy over the course of like 15 years, a thing I
Yes,
wring my
we've
hands about.
litigated it
to know.
on this podcast.
But this Yes Man was an interesting case study where they were like, these movies are getting too expensive. They don't do as well overseas. The stars cost too much money. And you price yourself out of good scripts. And Carey was like, I'll take no upfront salary, only back end. That's a way to keep the budget down. I'm betting on myself. And people pointed at it as like, this is a model going forward. And basically no one tried that ever again.
Yeah, well, you know,
And that's for a mediocre movie.
And
That
it
did
still
okay.
made money.
it made money.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made more than the 20 he would have made upfront had he stuck to his quote.
Right.
Number 6 of the box office is 7 pounds. Do not touch the jellyfish.
Normal.
Like
Yeah,
Diana
this is the
Nyad.
thing. This is people are like, where did fucking Diana Nyad? Where did Marvel come from? I'm like, Hollywood was
Yes.
a little bit out of ideas.
Yeah, but also look.
I'm not.
They were
trying to be
rummaging in the
rude.
junk drawer, be like, "Will this work? Is this the movie?"
Buttons?
Yeah. Jellyfish.
What is fascinating though
Nazi
is you
Tom
look at
Cruise?
this 10 and a lot of people are a little bit off their game, but it's like
Yeah.
stars, right?
Yeah.
It's
It's like Owen Wilson, Jennifer Aniston, Brad Pitt and Kate Blanchett, Will Smith, Tom Cruise, Adam
Sandler.
Sandler,
Jim Carrey.
Carrie,
Jim Carrey. These are
jellyfish,
all A-listers, jellyfish.
Despero,
Oh,
And
the
his
tails.
and his tail.
and
The
his
tales he
tail.
told.
Number 7 at the box office. Number 8, Keanu Reeves, and The Day the Earth Stood Still.
A big star?
Big star, not a big.
That's
hit,
his
obviously.
last hit before he goes into
Total.
another
Can you
fallow period
imagine
to be saved from Wick.
A
Yeah.
multiplex now where all of those people are in movies that you could go see
No,
at once. That's,
no.
I mean, that's why.
and not one of those films is a sequel.
No.
There's a remake.
No.
They're book adaptations.
No, I mean 7.
Well, Benjamin Button's a
pounds.
sequel to Clifford. But other than that, yeah.
Yes, no, it is wild to think
And
about.
you know
like,
what? We're
yeah.
going to keep it going because number 9 is not a sequel. It's The Spirit, which is a huge flop.
Oh,
obviously.
humongous flop. Disaster.
Opening this weekend. Again,
Right.
Christmas.
Yeah. But that's
Christmas for this?
that's also a moment where people are like, "Oh, maybe superhero movies are finally dead.
Yeah, right. That's a good
yeah.
point. But, you know, obviously,
We did it.
The Spirit is sort of a sequel
Yeah.
to Sin City.
Yes.
Like it's being presented that way. But, you know, and then 10 is Doubt.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't think, a sequel.
David, look it up.
Send a family photo.
Checking his phone.
No, I'm seeing
we
yes,
have to
it is
send
actually.
we have to send
yeah.
a family photo to daycare, okay? Just being reminded.
You have to send one?
They want one.
Is it family day?
They're doing some kind of family photo thing. I don't know.
Your
But,
daughter's photo at school is very funny.
she's really into, for whatever reason, closing one eye when she smiles.
She's doing a goofball
So it
face.
looks like she's
well, you
fucking
should-
Shirley Temple,
should-
like, you know, at
Should
the end of
never
a
have shown her
dance number.
Valkyrie.
Can I? Can I say it, David?
Daddy, I
What?
want one eye.
She's giving a little stinker.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, she can be a little stinker
She's giving a
sometimes.
little
and
stinker.
It's very cute when she's a little stinker, obviously.
The other fascinating thing, Richard, you saying this feels like a million years ago.
Mhm.
This is a
I
thing
had
I feel like people are talking about a lot now.
I had to go to number 17 to find a sequel, and it's Quantum of Solace.
Wow.
The first true sequel is
Which had been
is
out
Madagascar.
for like 6 weeks.
And also, the
Yeah.
James Bond doesn't really count.
No.
The first true sequel is Madagascar Escape to Africa.
which had
is
also been
number
out for
20.
like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8, in fact.
Jeez. Undershot it. No, not only is it like, can you imagine going to a multiplex and all those stars having new movies out in wide release, but also that list is still largely our biggest stars. Like
I
some
know.
people have waxed
Yeah.
and waned a little bit,
Yeah.
or they've shifted or whatever. But
It's a lot of our favorite stars. You're right.
Yeah, it's this thing that people talk about where it's
Marley.
like there was whatever survey that came out of America's top movie star, not the Q score, but there was one of those sort of Showcom things or whatever. and it was like the top 20 living movie stars, and the only guy who cracked it who was under 40 was Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
Was the only guy who was not already a movie star by 1999.
Right.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But I think we have great new stars.
I love them. It just feels like we're not letting them elevate.
Because Hitman is going to Netflix.
That's the fucking problem.
Look,
We're not giving them.
I understand why
will
it
say
is.
things off mic about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, Glenn Powell's not young. He's no spring chicken.
He's 34.
Wow,
But he's
he is
aging in
34.
reverse,
How do you
so-
know that?
Yeah.
He's not aging in reverse. He's
How do
just
I know
not
how old
aging.
Glenn Powell is? You don't think I look that up every 2 days?
every minute of every day.
Come on. Give me some credit.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have our young stars. Well,
I love our young
it's got
stars. I'm
some-
just saying,
Can you say that like Trump though?
we love our young stars.
We've got Zendaya.
You're gonna love her. You're gonna love her.
They go Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell, he's the future. Doesn't get to carry a movie at the box office.
Hangman, they called him.
He's supporting. If he's the lead, it goes to streamers.
They call him Zank, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know.
They call him Zank. I like that we're all of us, our Trump sounds like a Borscht Belt comment.
Yeah, I don't know how to do Trump.
I wish I could do it better.
And I says to him, I said, take my wife.
Hey, Melania, he says.
Anatomy of a Fall. Was he pushed? It's just like I'm now doing like the whole festival season.
That zone, there's a lot
Zone
of
of
interest in
interest.
that zone.
Very bad things happening in that
Somewhere
zone.
between Trump and Zoidberg.
He has 3 daughters. What can I say?
Oh boy. So that's enough on Benjamin Button.
That's enough on
we're
Benjamin
done.
Button, says David Sams.
I think it's the truth.
Yeah.
The truth that I say that.
Now that we're
merchandise
all
spotlight.
newborn babies, I think it's time to wrap up.
Yeah, merchandise, but we
There's
are.
nothing. Well, I know the Criterion thing is kind of interesting,
I have the Criterion,
which is a fake Criterion.
essentially.
What do you
It's
Right.
just
mean?
Well, there would be things because Criterion, part of their thing is like their
do
curation.
nice art.
What do they allow in, right?
Mhm.
And there are people like Wes Anderson who have a pre-existing deal. His early films, Touchstone, Disney would be like, yeah, we'll let Criterion release it, and having a bigger, more commercial film would help finance the restorations of smaller, foreign, older films, whatever. Now he puts in his contract whenever he makes a new movie, after 4 or 5 years, the rights revert to Criterion. It goes to them, what have you, right? Fincher basically, Paramount like prepped the Blu-ray, did all the special features, and then he was like, I would like for this to be a Criterion movie. And Paramount basically paid to license Criterion as branding.
Yep.
And they like threw the C on it, but they physically made the thing. They
It's
did all the
basically
production.
their Blu-ray in a Criterion like sleeve is all it really
But
is.
even the sleeve, it's like, this isn't what the Criterion art would look like. They took the
just
poster,
has
they
a
put
C
the
on it.
Criterion C. It's like the one time people bought the honorific.
Huh.
And Fincher has like legit, I mean, Game, I guess this is his only other Criterion movie.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, we're waiting on Mank. No, Mank. Is there a Mank disc?
No, it was a false report.
Is there
It
a
still
Zank disc?
might happen. There's no
I'm
Zank
sure it'll
disc.
happen. The whole problem with him is it's not people
blue
are like
rank?
people are like, why won't anyone make
Take it.
this a blue rank,
There you go.
a blank.
A Blu-ray.
Why won't people make this? It's like because Fincher has to sign off on it, and he's going to take forever
Yeah,
to
correct.
sign off on it. because he
That's what's
needs
been
to
holding up the
inspect
7 4K.
100%. He
He-
needs to inspect every
his
single fucking
recolor
pixel
timing,
of the
yes.
thing. Yes, that's-
But yeah, no,
Same
Benjamin
with
Button's the
Cameron.
one where it's like, no, that was by all intents and purposes, for all intents and purposes, a Paramount Blu-ray that just had this little Criterion C on it. It's just interesting.
It is.
It's certain forums on the internet, they're still mad about it. That fake
That's better.
C,
There
that
you
crooked
go.
C.
Yeah, you hit it. The very end.
Oh my. Okay. It's
Time to end the episode.
time to end the
I
episode.
can't believe we have to
Goodbye.
record Meet Joe Black right after
I
this.
know.
You have to watch Meet Joe Black
Yeah.
right after this.
So we'll be done at midnight.
We're doing every one of our Fincher records paired as a back-to-back with a breast record. And then we're going to sit on the breast series for
I mean,
4
I know
years.
you guys have, this has been said so many
sure.
times, and you guys have talked about yourselves. Martin Brest is a perfect season.
No, we'll do. 'em.
It's a fascinating season.
We'll do
And
it.
if
And
we
it's
don't
short.
do them, it's to piss you off.
Correct.
You who's listening, who cares about
and
this?
and not the royal you, not all of you. The one person right now where you're thinking, is it me specifically? Yes, it's you. I'll say that we did the other day. We finally locked in an early 24 miniseries. That's one of the people we've been talking about forever, who's always just been well, we'll do them at some point. We'll do them at some point. We just finally went, let's
We're
just
doing
do it. We've
That's
gotten to a
exciting.
certain point. Not that the show has an end in sight, but we've been doing this for 8 years. Some of those people on the inevitable list were like starting to pull them off and be like, let's just fucking do it.
it's time. You know, we're all gonna die someday,
Yeah. And hopefully we'll die as little wrinkleless babies.
or giant ones in my case.
Yeah. Richard, thank you for being here as always.
Thank you for having me. This was very fun.
13? Is this lucky number 13?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe with the
Oh,
bonus
fuck.
episode.
All right, here we go.
David, look it up as we're wrapping up. Anything you want to plug, Richard?
Little Gold Man, my podcast at VF and my writing at VF.com. If you are in the mood for a 5-year-old YA novel, you could read All We Can Do Is Wait. Yeah, it's called All We Can Do Is Wait, written by me.
Hell yeah.
It's your 12th. Lady, Vanilla, Ryan,
Mm-hmm.
Widowmaker,
Mm.
Spanglish,
Mhm.
Home,
Yeah.
Big
Mm.
Eyes,
Big guys.
Big Guys,
Big guys.
Philly, Witches, Dog, Spartacus,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Trolls.
Trolls makes 13, but that doesn't-
and then
Biggest
Trolls
doesn't.
make 13. And
a
of course,
Trolls does.
your
Trolls
Trolls are coming back to theaters this
They're
fall.
banding together.
Yeah. I
I
meant
can't
to.
believe you didn't plug that.
My Trolls and I have had a falling out, unfortunately, because
no, sure.
they are upset about my labor practices and residuals. So they're striking with their little signs, little bastards. But we'll see.
Branch.
You know, I will
The
welcome them
Trolls
back with open
United will never
arms.
be defeated.
Poppy.
They should be happy with what they're getting.
Well.
Yeah.
Well. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media and helping to produce the show. Lane Montgomery and the Great American Novel for our theme song. Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. JJ Birch for our research. AJ McKee and Alex Barron for our editing. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon, Blank Check Special Features, where we do commentaries on film series and other stuff. We're doing the Pierce Brosnan Bonds right about now, right?
Yeah.
And we'll have done the Fincher music video episode, some fun stuff over there. We also unlock every 10 days an old episode from 3 years ago for free if you want to sign up for that.
That episode is Aliens.
Well, look
with
at that timing.
$.
Look at that timing. And coming up soon will be the previous Alien 3 episode.
Yes.
No, that's not the one where Ben falls asleep. That's Resurrection. But
But something to look forward to.
yep. Tune in next week for The Social Network, a movie that made some cultural impact.
Yeah, bit of a big movie.
Kind of an anti-Benjamin Button.
Yeah.
And that's a movie that people will never stop talking about, it feels like.
Ever.
No.
They should just make a sequel because there's so much has changed. But
Tune in for that. And as always, this episode, how long has it been?
Not that long.
shorter than the movie.
2 hours and 38 minutes.
But it feels a lot longer.
I forgot that was coming.